to assume 5 starters, all in their 30s, are going to hold up and be healthy all the way from opening day to the end of the year, it's just it's not realistic. So I think there will be another free agent signing, another one-year deal, and I don't think the Dylan Cease thing's in play anymore. I don't think Corbin Burns was ever an option. So the big trades for the Cardinals, I don't think are going to happen this offseason.
That was Greg Amsinger earlier today on the morning show. Greg might need to check in with the sources again, because according to some of the national analysts, Cardinals might still be in on Dylan Cease. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Ken Rosenthal reporting this morning that the Cardinals, according to his sources, remain interested in Dylan Cease even after signing Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, and Lance Lynn. He adds that it would be uncharacteristic of teams like the Reds or the Orioles to jump into the market, and their appetite for Cease is, quote, unlikely to diminish if the White Sox wait out, end quote. He's not the only one that is reporting this. Katie Woo had a piece that came out earlier today over on The Athletic saying that some industry sources also believe that the Cardinals could add another starter via trade for the right price. Her sources suggest that St. Louis has indeed shown interest in White Sox right-handed pitcher Dylan Cease, who would, quote, complement Gray atop the Cardinals' rotation, end quote. She adds that the Cardinals are also in the market for a swingman, though Matz could theoretically fill that role if the Cardinals were to trade or sign another starter this offseason. Again, all of that coming from Katie Woo and Ken Rosenthal, both of whom reporting that at The Athletic earlier today. Alex, we've said all along, if your offseason is Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, and you trade for a starter that has the upside of a number 1, number 2 front-end starter, however you want to classify them, that's the start of an A-plus offseason. But you got to make that next step. So far, you've done the bare minimum. The next step is adding the cherry to the top of getting that guy that actually ends up leading your rotation.
I mean, right now, I think they have the cherry, the whipped cream, and the sprinkles. They need the actual banana for the banana split. You actually got to get the piece of the sundae that makes it good, and that's this top pitcher. Are we sure, like, the Cardinals checking in or remain interested didn't just leave a voicemail saying, hey, if you decide to trade him, we got Dylan Carlson, and call us?
I mean, why are you so negative?
I'm not negative.
This should be an exciting moment.
It is exciting.
They're not done.
It is exciting. I won't be down on this one. Look, if you go get Dylan Cease, we've talked Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow makes me a little bit more nervous, but I think he's got more consistent, better stuff than what we've seen from Dylan Cease. This is how you basically you shut down all of the critics that say the Cardinals just like to play for the playoffs. No, now, if you go out there and make this significant of a move to get an ace, you're basically stating against what John Mozeliak said of we're building for a postseason run. Because you don't go out there and make this move unless you are. I'm skeptical because it sure doesn't seem like they're going to be willing to pay the price to acquire a pitcher of this status. But, man, if you do, this is how you sit there and get my praise.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if you make this kind of move, it shows that you're not just trying to build a 90 win, let's win the Central, and hey, let's get hot and see what can happen. No, it is very much a modernization of the rotation that they talked about, which, like, when they made the signings of Lynn and Gibson and then Gray was in, I was like, okay, like, that's good, but, like, you're still missing the dog. And now you got to go, they're at least interested in the guy that I would say, man, when that guy takes him out, I'm freaking scared if I'm the other team. And I'm glad to see that they're willing to do that, because this is a creative offseason. This is something that I would have said in years past, like, no, they wouldn't think outside the box. This is thinking outside the box. This is, hey, we've got 5 starters. Hell, we still need 1 more. Let's go get a guy. Move Matt, who's already under contract for 2 more years at $12 million, which, by the way, would be more than what Nick Martinez just got in Cincinnati to be a swing man. I love this kind of thinking by the Cardinals. We'll see if they get it done, but the fact that they're kind of intertwined with these Dylan Cease reports makes me go, okay, they're not just looking at Dylan Cease. It's not like, oh, we miss out on Cease, we're done. I think, to me, it says, hey, we're looking at Cease, we're looking at Glasnow, hey, we're looking at whoever maybe the Mariners are looking to potentially move this offseason. We're still looking for that guy to lead the rotation.
So a couple things on this. One, Dylan Cease wouldn't be my top target. I understand why he is for so many people, because you want the guy, right, that has multiple years of club control, and I understand that. I don't blame you for it, but I also understand what the cost is going to be for a guy like Dylan Cease. You're not getting him for Alec Burleson. Dylan Cease is going to come at the price of, most likely, Nolan Gorman. I don't want to trade Nolan Gorman. Now, push comes to shove, I get how you would talk yourself into that being the right idea for this team. That would be a sign that the Cardinals are going back to their roots, once again, and trying to become more of a run prevention team with good defense. They're going to be emphasizing defense at second base, and they're going to be emphasizing the pitching that they did not have over the last couple of seasons. I get it. It makes sense to me. Identity-wise, it's very clear what they're trying to accomplish. I personally, though, look at the teams that are having success in the postseason in recent years and see a whole lot of left-handed thump in their lineup. And if you trade Nolan Gorman, you lack that in a serious way going into the 2024 season. So that is my reservation about making a move like this. I would personally prefer to go out and acquire a guy like Tyler Glasnow, who, yes, has one more year under his contract. And yes, it's $25 million. And yes, has a serious injury history. But when the guy is on the mound, he is one of the most dominant starters in all of Major League Baseball. He strikes out nearly 1 out of every 3 batters that he faces. That is the kind of stuff that the Cardinals have been lacking. And because you were able to go out there and acquire Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, and Sonny Gray to start out this offseason, you have the innings to make up for when he is on the injured list. So that's why I personally would prefer that route. The other thing, though, that I like about the order of operations for the Cardinals this offseason, Alex, you guys remember this time last year, we had all convinced ourselves the Cardinals are going to trade for Sean Murphy. But the price was exorbitant, specifically for the Cardinals, because they were desperate. They were in desperate need for a catcher, and everybody across Major League Baseball knew it. They went into the offseason without a starter. Their depth chart, if it was the skeleton depth chart, had an X next to the starter. Now, their second name on that list was Andrew Knizner. But they told everybody who would listen, Knizner is not our starter. We don't believe that he's a starter. We need a starting catcher. They were trying to get Wilson Contreras. They were talking about Sean Murphy. And those were really the only 2 options that they had. So it was either overpay in money for Contreras or overpay in a big way for Sean Murphy via trade. What ended up happening is they overpaid for Contreras by years, at least. And then the asking price dropped when another team who was less desperate entered the fray for Sean Murphy. The Cardinals have now placed themselves in position for starting pitching this offseason that the Braves were in last year for a catcher. They were not desperate, but they saw an opportunity to upgrade, and they were opportunistic. The Cardinals, instead of operating from a place of desperation this year, are trying to operate from a place of opportunistic. That is something that I do give them credit for with what they've done early on in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, I could still be upset about giving both Lynn and Gibson the 12 or 11, $13 million contracts, but, I mean, you did exactly what you said you needed to do, pitching, and now you're trying to be aggressive and opportunistic to get that best pitcher. My only pushback with the Glasnow versus the Cease, and I know I'm in the minority because you're trading Nolan Gorman. Glasnow, like I said yesterday, he's gone after next year. You're not going to be able to afford that. And now you're back to only having Sonny Gray and not knowing who that next guy is. And sure, you can hope that you develop the pitchers, but you haven't been able to develop those pitchers. I would much rather have a Dylan Cease and Sonny Gray at the top of my rotation for the next 2 years. And the hope is you can lock Dylan Cease up and say he's going to be a part of this rotation moving forward. And then guess what? Now I'm strong on the pitching side for the next 2 years, and then hopefully my pitching develops. But I'm not weak on the offensive side. Sure, your left-handed pop is gone. Sure, you don't have that big threat, that young threat in the middle. But I still got Jordan Walker. I still got a lot of pieces that make me a dangerous offense. And now my pitching is dangerous also. So I would lean more towards, me personally, I'd rather have Logan Gilbert for Nolan Gorman. But if Dylan Cease is going to be available and it's going to take Nolan Gorman, it sucks. I'm probably going to hate seeing him play well. But at least I know my pitching is dominant for the next 2 years.
And I do understand that, and I kind of like the idea of the Cease, or Gilbert definitely more, but if he's not available, the Cease idea, because you're right, it is 2 years of, hey, we're not just going to be a team that's going to win the Central. It's 2 years of, hey, we're making a serious push in this 2-year frame with Arenado. You have to figure out Goldie's contract for this year, of course, but with those 2 guys and Walker and this young core, it's a 2-year window of, hey, we've got our 1 and 2. Compared to the Glasnow move, and I don't want to call it an all-in move, but it would certainly feel kind of that way because he is just a 1-year rental, and then you're right, you have to go back to the market. But I lean on the side of, I look at Gorman, you know me, I dig the long ball, so I just don't see how you replace his power, so I would much rather go that rental type from Glasnow and then figure out his spot in the rotation again next offseason.
Can you just figure out how to dig the fastball instead?
If this was just a one-for-one conversation, if it was a, hey, would you rather have Glasnow for 1 year or Cease for 2? I would rather have Cease.
Yeah.
Like, no doubt about it, absolutely. But it's not. It's a, would you rather have Glass now and remove Burleson from your roster, or have Cease and remove Gorman from your roster? And in that scenario, man, I would rather figure out my pitching again next offseason in terms of the top end of the rotation, hope that maybe one of those young guys comes through, but realistically speaking, probably have to make another move next year to shore up the rotation. I'm willing to get there and right now have my answers for 2024. I'll figure out the rest next year because guys are going to become available. If you had told me this time last year that Corbin Burns would suddenly become available this time, not sure I would have totally anticipated that, especially with Craig Counsell leaving. If you had told me this time last year that Randy Arozarena was potentially going to be traded now, this offseason, wouldn't have totally seen that one coming either. Guys become disgruntled. Teams want to change things. There is going to become a pitcher that is available this time next year that was not available this time last year. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. T-Bone, I know you got one other thing you want to get to before I talk about some of the other options that may be available as well.
Well, I like what you just said of you don't know what's available next year. And the reason I say that is because I would say it's very unlikely that Gorman's value just falls completely off the board by this time next year. There's a chance that he may not have the season that we're expecting, but there's still a chance a lot of teams will look at him and go, that's Kyle Schwarber 2.0 potentially. So then if Seattle does decide, hey, this is the next offseason is the year we trade Logan Gilbert, then maybe you can go from Gorman, instead of getting a 2-year guy in Cease, you can get a guy with 4 years of control. So that's why I'm a little more hesitant to just pull the trigger now on Nolan Gorman, because I think his value will still be at its point now, next offseason, if not maybe even higher.
So the other thing that I wanted to get to here, and we'll get out of here in just a moment, we got Sarris coming up at 11:30. I don't think it's just Glasnow and Cease. I think you could also have some other options that are out there. Alex, you mentioned Logan Gilbert. He's somebody that maybe becomes available. Another pitcher from the Mariners, though, that I think we should keep our eyes on. Now, this is just my own speculation. It is not based on reporting that has specifically been done in Seattle. But there's a lot of rumors out there that Blake Snell would really like to pitch for the Seattle Mariners. He wants to go back home. He's from Seattle. He was at the Seahawks game this past week, and there were some reports that came out of it of, hey, he really wants to be back in Seattle pitching for the Mariners. The way they could make that work money-wise is by trading Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray had Tommy John surgery in early May of last season. So the opportunity for him to pitch for you on opening day, probably not there. But you would think he would only miss a couple of months of the season. He should be back at some point before the middle of next year. And in that scenario, Robbie Ray would be entering what is essentially a 1-year, $23 million contract because he has an opt-out after next year. And if he pitches well, he's probably going to take it because he has 2 years left after next season at $25 per. He could get more than that on the open market if he wanted to do so. Robbie Ray is a really freaking good pitcher, man. All of the stuff that we talk about with Tyler Glasnow, Robbie Ray has that too. Crazy swing and miss stuff. Now, it's been a little erratic. It's been up and down over the course of his career. But when healthy, he's about as good as you're going to find on this market, whether via trade or via free agency. So Robbie Ray would be somebody that absolutely, for me, is somebody that I'm interested in for the Cardinals. I also don't think it would take a ton to acquire him because of the injury and because of the cost, $23 million, and the uncertainty of whether or not you have him beyond the 2024 season. Another pitcher that we talked about is Shane Bieber. Again, a 1-year deal. I'm not all that interested in Shane Bieber at this point in time because he doesn't have the swing and miss that they crave. But those are probably the top 3 options for you. Tyler Glasnow, Dylan Cease, and then one of the Mariners pitchers. I personally actually would lean towards Robbie Ray as my top target from the Mariners if the Mariners end up making him available. So that's where I think we're at right now with the pitching trade market. Do have a little bit of news to pass along.
We just got Robbie Ray?
Nope.
Logan Gilbert?
Nope.
Open arm.
It's actually negative news if you're a Cardinals fan. Enrique Rojas works for ESPN Deportes. He said that Yadier Molina said in an interview today that he has abandoned the idea of being a full-time coach with the Cardinals in 2024 due to family matters, and that instead he anticipates being a special advisor with scheduled visits to training to spring training and the regular season.
Yeah, that makes sense. You didn't want to be a full-time coach.
Yeah.
And if there's family issues, hope they're not anything severe, but He didn't want to be a full-time coach yet, and I get it. You're what, a year removed from being retired? Probably wants to enjoy himself a little bit more.
And
give it a couple
is
years.
16, I think.
Yeah, I heard Benji talking about it this morning, that like he's involved with baseball right now pretty heavily. So yeah, I mean, he's doing what Holiday did. Probably realizing like maybe I should enjoy retirement a little bit more.
I'm glad that the Cardinals vetted it. Because there was a point in time a few weeks ago where everybody wanted them to go gung-ho about this, and we all wondered, like, hey, the last year that he was here in St. Louis, he did not seem overly committed to being here in St. Louis. He wanted to be in Puerto Rico at times. That's his right. I get it. I understand it. I don't blame him, especially now. You're retired, dude. Like, you've got stuff going on with your family at home. Like, I totally understand how that's a pull. Make sure you're prepared for the time commitment that exists here if you want to be a full-time coach. So, good for him, good for the Cardinals for vetting it ahead of time, and good for everybody involved that he's going to be at least available to them in some capacity in 2024. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. In 15 minutes, we'll get to Eno Sarris, baseball writer for The Athletic. But next, Jordan Kyrou might not have the goal-scoring production that we were anticipating this year, but Alex has some interesting numbers on how his overall game might actually be improved from a year ago. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Jordan Kyrou, eventually is going to start scoring. he's getting chances. He's had a ton of opportunities this year. It's just not going in, but he's got to get on the inside a little bit more. And a lot of our guys, when the puck's not going in the net, you got to do something different. You got to get on the inside a little bit more, create some chances around the net, second and third opportunities, things like that. Can't be all on the outside.
That was Craig Berube on the Fast Lane yesterday. If you missed any of their conversation, they talked with him every single week. It's fantastic radio every time. Chatting with the Chief. You can check it out, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Alex, he mentioned Jordan Kyrou, who has not had the goal production that any of us were anticipating early on this season. However, you said something interesting to us pre-show yesterday that we didn't end up getting to during the show, but today we're going to give you some time here.
It's because I had to force him to put it in.
That's right. Jordan Kyrou, while not having the goal production, might be having a better overall season than he had a year ago. Why do you say that?
Because he's plus minus and his defensive play is not affecting the overall outcome of games. So what I mean by that is, 20 game was the threshold that we were talking about. Now, obviously, they've played one more, but we're going to stick with 20 games.
Outdated numbers.
I know. Unbelievable. So to sit there and say that, he doesn't have the goal production. He's got 4 goals and 13 points through 20 games. That's not a good look. But people are forgetting last year he had 7 goals and 16 points through 20 games. He was still in the position last year where people were like, oh my God, what's wrong with Kyrou? He should be having more goals than this. And then he finished the season with 37. The difference in why Jordan Kyrou is better is because it was a minus 13 through 20 games. He had, what was that? 3 more points and was a minus 4 last season. So he is not a defensive liability on the ice. And I know people will, respond and say, yes, he is. Every time I see him out there, the other team's scoring goals. They're not, though. Jordan Kyrou, although he's not been scoring goals, mind you, he's also had 5 breakaways and is just snake bit right now. Jordan Kyrou is in the same situation he was last season offensively, but a better overall player. And this is what Kerbs told us yesterday. I would much rather have a guy at the end of the season who's got 65 points and is like a plus 15 than a dude who's got 75 points and is a minus 37. And that's what Jordan Kyrou was last year. And part of the reason why this team is so up and down is because Jordan Kyrou is not the liability he was last year.
So I think a big part of this, too, to your point, I find all those to be really interesting numbers, Alex, is that he's just not producing on the power play the way that he did a year ago.
Yep.
I mean, the power play through 20 games last year was 3 of his 7 goals. So he had the exact same 5-on-5 production last year as he does this season. The difference is he has yet to score a power play goal so far this year. Now, that's something that needs to be improved. He's got to get out there and actually start producing on the power play for you or converting on some of those breakaways. And when he does, and I say win for a reason, he will. This is not something where he's just suddenly become a bad shooter and he's never going to be a 30-goal scorer again.
He's at 5.8% shooting percentage right now.
He's been snake bitten. He's running into some bad luck. He's Wilson Contreras at the beginning of last year where it was like, damn, he's hitting the ball hard, but he can't seem to buy an actual hit. And eventually it all came his way. And by the end of the season, guess what? He put up the same kind of production that we were anticipating out of him. Jordan Kyrou's going to be fine, man. The thing that I care about a lot more is not the goal-scoring number that he's at right now while playing, I think, pretty well overall. It's the fact that he has finally gotten to a place where we can watch these games, and there's moments, definitely, where you say to yourself, man, I wish he wasn't straight-legging there. But for the most part, I don't watch these games and say to myself, man, the reason why they're struggling defensively is because of Jordan Kyrou. There's other guys that have become a whipping boy for the team, but it is not Jordan Kyrou so much this year, and that is, given where we've been with him in the past, a hell of an improvement from recent years.
And that's one season. That's in a matter of one season where Jordan Kyrou went from being a liability almost every night on the ice, although he's giving you offense, to now he's a responsible player that Craig Berube is just trying to find. He's one of those guys that he just is hot and cold. And when he gets hot, he scores 5 or 6 goals in a small stretch, and you're looking at, oh, okay, you're right back to it. That's how it goes sometimes when you're an offensive player. But if you're better defensively, then it doesn't matter if you're not scoring all the time.
So the other guy that's come under some scrutiny, and we'll get to this real quick, Alex, is Jordan Bennington. He had a few really bad games there in a row against the Kings, Arizona, Nashville. But over the last 2, he's 1-1, but the loss was not on him against Minnesota. He was the one that kept them in the game. He had a .930 save percentage. I brought up last season how, hey, through 15 games, he was great last year, and then he had the 7-game stretch where he was just terrible, and it was the start of what ended up being a prolonged slump for Bennington. You think the last 2 games end up getting him back on track, and it's okay to say now, hey, it was a weird 3-game stretch. He's going to be fine?
Yeah, I do. I think the 3-game stretch where Binnington struggled, some of it was Binnington. I'm sure you'd want pucks back, and Berube even said they pulled him because a couple of situations there you'd want to see the save. But overall, the defensive structure just got really weak in those stretch. That stretch in California, it really broke down, and you're putting your goaltender in a tough situation. I think the bounce back he had against Minnesota and Chicago showed you that Jordan Binnington's going to be fine in this situation.
He's back in action tonight with the Blues. It's expected that he's going to be in net for them against the Sabres. Alex will have your pregame coverage starting tonight at 6 o'clock right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Coming up next, we're talking to Sarris, baseball writer for The Athletic. He is one of the guys that I trust the most when it comes to pitching. What does he think of the Cardinals signing so far, and who would he target if he was going to the trade market next for the Cardinals in this offseason? We'll talk to about it all coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they'll be taking on the Buffalo Sabres. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale, and then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffautoPlex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. One of our favorite guests each and every time that we have him on is Sarris. He's a baseball writer for The Athletic. If you want to learn a little bit about pitching, you should be reading Eno's work over there. You can also follow him on Twitter. He's at Eno_Sarris, Sarris. We appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the Cardinals pitching additions that they've made so far this offseason. They get the big front end guy with Sonny Gray, and then they add a couple of innings eaters at the back end with Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. When you look at it in its entirety thus far, how do you feel about the three pitchers that the Cardinals have acquired?
I feel like it's all right. It's fine. I like the Sonny Gray signing a lot, actually. I think he's worth that money. He recently redeveloped his slider. You can call it a sweeper if you want, but it's a very horizontal slider. And so now he has two really good breaking balls. I think people in St. Louis know how good an elite breaking ball can be, even for an end-of-career guy, and he's not even quite as old as the other two guys they signed. So I think Sonny Gray was a great signing for them. I think he can be, I don't know if he's a number one among all of the number ones. I don't know if he's like a top 15 type pitcher in the league. But I think he was a great signing. The other two, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis, Lance Lynn, they're kind of similar. They're just like they're guys that have a bunch of pitches, have command in good years, can have a good year, can have a bad year, will pitch you innings. And I think there's some pressure on this offense that has the pieces to be one of the best offenses in the league, to play the way it can and win some of those 50-50 games that those guys will pitch. So I'm going to give them an incomplete, I guess.
So to make it a complete and would you call it a successful offseason, do they have to acquire somebody that's better than Sonny Gray?
There's ways that, I look at rotations two ways. One is the rotation that gets you there, right? And the rotation that gets you there is the rotation that can help your team win 87 wins, right? You get into the playoffs, you roll the dice, and you go. The rotation that you have once you get there is another question. And right now, I think they have one pitcher that I would want to start in a 5-game series. One pitcher I'd be very excited to start. So, yes. I think if they want to go further into October and not just get to October, I think they need another pitcher at the top.
So, I think the next route that they're going to try to go in that regard, there was a report today from your colleagues, Ken Rosenthal and Katie Wu, who suggested, hey, the Cardinals are at least interested in going out and acquiring Dylan Cease via trade. Now, the asking price for him is obviously going to be exorbitant. He's a young pitcher. He's very good. He's talented. He's had big-time years already in his career, and he's got 2 years of club control at a reasonable price. So I get why the Cardinals would be interested. I also get why 20 teams in Major League Baseball would be interested in him. Tyler Glasnow's out there. Sounds like Shane Bieber's available. And then we'll see what happens with the Mariners if they were to go out there and make one of their pitchers available. Glasnow and Cease, I think, are the two guys that we focus the most time on. If you were the Cardinals, would you, given the asking price that we know is going to be a lot different for those two, would you prefer one over the other for the Cardinals?
There's some similarities between these two guys. I've got a number called Stuff Plus that just tries to put together just the physical characteristics of a pitcher's pitches and give you a sense of how good their stuff is. And these guys are both near the top of that list. Let me see what I've got here. Tyler Glass now 7th in the league in Stuff Plus. Dylan Cease 13th. Other guys at the top here are Spencer Strider, Bobby Miller, Garrett Cole, Shohei Ohtani. So it's a list of the best stuff in the big leagues, and they're both on it. So I like that part. Cease has shown to be better health-wise. And I think with Glass now, you're hoping for 100 to 120 innings again. With Cease, I think you can pencil him in for more 150 to 180. Plus, you get 2 years of him. So I would rather have Dylan Cease. I know the command isn't always there, and he's not coming off the best year ERA-wise. But I would rather have Dylan Cease and work with him to improve that command and to do certain things with his pitches. Just knowing that I get the innings and I get 2 years, then you get to the price. So I don't know what the price is. Is it Gorman? Is it just minor leaguers? How many minor leaguers is it? I was really impressed with Victor Scott at the Fall League when I was there. Do they want him to be their center fielder of the future, or are they okay trading him away? That sort of thing. So it depends on the price a little bit for me. But I prefer Dylan Cease just between the two pitchers.
Let's say it is Nolan Gorman. Does that change your opinion? Because I know you mentioned that the Cardinals have that scary offense going into next season.
Man, I'd much rather have Nolan Gorman in hand. And, one thing that I would say is that I would try to hold the line for a little bit because the Aaron Bummer trade was not a big deal. It was just a reliever. But one thing that I saw in the Aaron Bummer trade was that the White Sox are so bad, their organization is so needing of talent, that they were willing to take like 6 players that the Braves were probably all going to designate for assignment. And so if I see that trade, I say, oh, man, White Sox, take my poo-poo platter of all of my, level 2
Tyler
prospects.
O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, and guys in the minors.
Yeah, exactly. Like take quantity because – and that's also been what the Cardinals have done in the past, right? To get Goldschmidt, to get the guys they've wanted, they've tried to put together a large assortment of players. And not give up necessarily pieces that they want to keep around for the future. So, I would say that I think they can make this deal without Gorman.
Interesting. Out of curiosity, one other guy that we've brought up, and you brought up Bryce Miller, who was really high in your rankings for Stuff Plus as well, and that's a name that pops out for sure, given the Mariners and what their plans are going into the offseason. Another pitcher from their staff that's coming back from injury right now is Robbie Ray. There's been some stuff percolating that maybe Blake Snell would like to go back to Seattle, where he's from, and pitch for the Mariners. I don't know what their interest level is in him, though, so it's unknown. If they were to make Robbie Ray available to make that kind of a move, and we know Jerry DiPoto's a crazy person, maybe he would be interested in doing something like this. Is Robbie Ray
totally
somebody that would
Blake Snell and trade Robbie Ray? That's totally something you would do.
Right? Thank you. I appreciate that you're in on this with me. Is he a guy that you would be interested in if he became available here in St. Louis?
I think so. I think in that case, you would be paying a lot less. Because you'd be taking on money, and it'd be almost like, getting Robbie Ray in free agency. And you wouldn't be too sad to see the players go that went. You know what I mean? Because you're paying for guys coming off injury, and he has money attached to him. So I think that is an interesting way to go. If I rank them just on talent, I have Ray behind Cease and Glass now.
Does he rate well in your stuff metrics, though? When healthy,
He doesn't
I guess.
Really.
Oh, interesting.
He doesn't really. It's surprising. But one thing is, his slider, what he is a testament to is how much of a slider league this has become. He has, by Stuff Plus, a slightly above average slider. He throws it like 45% of the time, And so, if you have a good enough slider, just throw it a ton. I don't know if necessarily, Sonny Gray did that last year. I don't know if that's necessarily a thing that all the Cardinals have done, but it's the thing that the league has done. Sliders have risen every year, year over year for like 10 years running.
We're talking to Eno Sarris for just another minute here on 101 ESPN. You can read his great work over at The Athletic, and be sure to follow him on Twitter as well, at Eno_Sarris. Eno, final question that I had is about a piece that you wrote earlier today. I found it to be really interesting to read about some of the up-and-coming people in Major League Baseball that are either on the front office side or on the coaching staff side of things. You did not have anybody from the Cardinals on this list, and that is something that we've talked a lot about when it comes to the brain drain that's taking place here. Did you have names that came up in your research for this piece that were associated with the Cardinals, or is this something that they should be trying to do within as well, is to get some of the brightest and youngest people into the organization again?
I think that the thing that everybody wants right now is player development. It's the hardest thing to get right, and it's hard to keep right because if you keep hiring good coaches, they go away. Mm-hmm. They get hired by other places. And so it's something you have to stay on top of every year. You have to keep hiring great coaches, just knowing that you're going to lose great coaches in the future if you're good. And that's what's happening in Houston. I reported my number one name on that list was Sarah Gellis. And she's been with the Astros since 2019 doing director of R&D. The Astros are kind of the flagship for player development and R&D. And so, yes, of course, she goes and gets hired by the Pirates to be an AGM, and they've had plenty of people leaving Houston. They have to be on top of it and continue to hire. I think St. Louis, within player development, there's a strong respect for their ability to turn out players, position players. And when you look at their hitting program, I just talked what I said. I was really impressed with Victor Scott. He was telling me about the different benchmarks they give him, statistical benchmarks, the different drills they give him in the offseason. Those are commensurate with the best hitting programs that I've heard of. The things that he was talking about are what I hear from other teams when they talk about developing hitting, and you can see it. The hitters come up and they hit. They're even Dylan Carlson. It's not the best outcome, but he's a major league player. The Cardinals are good at that. What they're not so good at is pitching development. And also, the author of that hitting program is gone, And so, there's, is it going to keep going? Have they hired good enough people to keep it going? I think so, but I'm not sure. On the pitching side, they are hiring. They're looking for people. And so that's why they will be somebody that might read this list and look for people to poach off it.
Interesting. Hey, we appreciate the time as always, man. Always great to catch up. If we don't talk to you before Christmas, happy holidays to you and the family. And hopefully we'll chat again soon if the Cardinals end up making a big move with one of the pitchers that we discussed today.
Yeah. Are you guys going to the winter meetings?
We will not be there. No, I'm going out of town this weekend, actually, and we will not be. Our company is not paying for us to head to the winter meetings.
If you got room in your suitcase, I'll go with you.
Yeah, no, it's all beer. But,
okay, well, now I really want to go with you,
Yeah, come on out to St. Louis. Let's put together a meetup here in St. Louis. We'll go out to Side Project or one of the good local breweries in town.
We'll do our own winter meetings here in St. Louis together.
Exactly.
I was supposed to do one. I forget why.
It was COVID, right? Wasn't it COVID?
Yeah. But I'll try to get one together. And then thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. That's Eno Sarris. Always appreciate his time. One of the best in the business. If you want to learn about pitching, you want to be a little smarter about pitching, don't listen to us. Just go read Eno stuff. We're just parroting anything that Eno says. So that's the best place to go for it. Alex, what I took from that interview was threefold. One, the Tyler Glasnow and Dylan Cease are the guys. Capital T, capital G, those are the guys that you want to be out there going to acquire. Robbie Ray, two, maybe not that guy.
Good to know.
And three, Bobby Miller. Hot damn. Okay, maybe that's a guy that we should have higher on our list than Robbie Ray.
Oh, no, that's not the guy that doesn't want the ball. Sorry, for some reason. That's the one that we talked about, like trading Nolan Arenado for, right?
No, Bobby Miller is one of their
Was
younger...
he the Dodgers?
Yeah. Wait, is it Bobby Miller?
Bryce Miller. That's
Bryce Miller. That's who he said.
I was going to say, Bobby Miller, I thought was the Dodgers guy, wasn't it?
You are correct. You had that correct. In my head, I was saying Bryce Miller, and then I ended up saying Bobby Miller.
What I learned from the interview is Bryce Miller would be a great guy. You were thinking Bobby Miller.
Good point. Bryce Miller, who is the young starter, 24 years old for the Seattle Mariners, pitched 130 innings this year, did not have crazy good strikeout numbers and didn't have like some unbelievable ERA at a 4.3 ERA this year. But the stuff numbers are there. He has very good stuff according to Eno's metrics. Maybe that's somebody to keep in mind. Man, just raid the entire Mariners pitching staff. Just get all of them.
What I took away from that interview is I want to go to the winter meetings with Eno.
Right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Eno's a big beer guy. He likes
probably
the beer that I like, though, so I don't know if you would be interested in
I'll
it,
drink
Alex.
with Eno, just not you.
Yeah.
Fair.
By the way, can we give Jeff Albert his roses yet? I mean, that's who Eno was referring to when he said that guy is gone with the hitting program. That was Jeff Albert. Now,
It's because you all ran him out of town.
don't look at me.
Yeah, you did.
When we talked about Jeff Albert, I think we all were in agreement at the time. You know, I think he's doing great things for the minor league and the whole hitting philosophy across the Cardinals system. I just don't know if he ever belonged at the big league staff level, though. That's where I think he was kind of out of position. Yeah. But all the work that he did behind the scenes of, hey, let's improve our minor league hitting instruction. I mean, you just heard it from Eno and from Victor Scott, who could be roaming center field this year for the Cardinals. That's the guy that put that all in place for all these minor leaguers that have come up.
Now they need to do that on the pitching side.
Yeah.
Well, they got Dusty Blake.
That's the next thing they need to do. I think Dusty's a legit coach. Like, that's the thing that's different between he and Jeff Albert. Dusty Blake, while he gets a lot of criticism from Cardinals fans, and that's fair, like, he's not Dave Duncan, and nobody's ever going to be Dave Duncan here in St. Louis. He was a coach in college, and people laugh at that and suggest that it's like some hilarious thing that they hired a guy from college. Guys, you know where some of the best and brightest coaches from Major League Baseball are going right now because the salaries are better? They're going to the college ranks because they can be paid more in college baseball. Like, the Twins pitching coach went to LSU because he was like, yeah, I'm going to get paid more money to go down there, and I'll just be a part of their pitching program because, like, the research is better down there at times. The money is better down there. Some of the technology at times is better down there. Same thing's true in the NFL. Some of the stuff that you have in college, the reason why these college football players that end up getting drafted come back to their college universities for the offseason is because they have better weight programs there. They have better facilities there. The NFL teams are like, yeah, we don't have to do that because we don't have to recruit anybody. We just sign guys via free agency and give them top dollar. In college, you got to bring them to your facilities, walk them through everything, show them how it's the next Taj Mahal, and then you hope to God that the 18-year-old kid was wooed by what they were able to see while they were in town. So it's not this laughable thing that Dusty Blake was at Duke. He was there because he was a really good coach, and now the Cardinals believe in him to be the next guy that is a pitching coach at the major league level. What they need is guys that oversee the minor league development path, and I don't know if he's necessarily the guy to do that. That's a massive job. It was probably too big for Jeff Albert. It's certainly too big on the pitching side of things. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll talk to Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for Bally Sports Midwest and 101 ESPN. Questions and Answers is coming up next here on 101 ESPN. He's Alex, that's T-Bone on BK. Joey Vitale joining us here in just a little bit. But first, we got to get to some questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. From the 314, guys, after everything you've discussed today, if you could only trade for one player, understanding what it's going to cost for them, who would you trade for this offseason?
Mine would be Cease, especially if I don't have to give up Gorman. Yeah, I would throw everything I could that doesn't include Gorman to get Dylan Cease.
If that's the case, by the way, if you don't have to include Gorman, I'm with you.
Yeah, and I've said I was skeptical of the White Sox of needing Gorman because they are in such a desperate need of just quantity over quality. If it's not Gorman, if he's not in the trade, then Cease. If he does have to be involved and the Cardinals play the hard line and it just won't happen without him, then I would say Glasnow.
That's where I'm at as well. I think you could get an A-grade offseason if you trade for one of Glasnow, Cease, or Robbie Ray. Those would be the three guys that I would put into that criteria. I know Robbie Ray is a step down from those other two that we just mentioned there, but, man, if he ends up becoming available and doesn't cost you a lot to acquire, he could be back by mid-May, late May, and you could end up having him by the end of the season as your number one starter or number two starter behind Sonny Gray. And those guys starting in a playoff series, you feel pretty good about that going back to back. So those would be the three guys that I think are the starting point for a compelling offseason. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, Nick Martinez signed a 2-year deal worth $26 million. And yesterday, Luis Severino signed a 1-year deal worth $13 million. Would you rather have one of those two or the two guys that the Cardinals ended up signing for the back end of their rotation?
I'd rather have Luis Severino because that's one of those guys that you're hoping you could get back to that top two starter in a rotation mindset. And I know he hasn't been good. He's been injured over the last 4 or 5 years. But to me, he's like what Cody Bellinger was last year. And I was the one that said, like, man, I'd throw money at Cody Bellinger because I bet you he has a bounce back. By the end of this season, I would put money down that Luis Severino has better numbers than Lynn or Gibson.
Yeah, I don't think I would have done either, honestly. And I wasn't all that thrilled with the Lynn signing. I think it was fine. But at least with Lynn, you know, like, hey, this guy is going to take the ball every day. Now, you hope the ball stays in the ballpark, but at least he's going to take the ball every day, doesn't have an injury history. And it's kind of the same with Kyle Gibson. So that's why I was kind of against the Luis Severino. And if you're saying I could have Steven Matz in the swingman role or Nick Martinez, like Martinez has done it for 2 years. Outside of that, he was just kind of iffy before where he was out of baseball from 18 to 22. Yeah. So I'd much rather have like Matz as the swingman if you're going out and still getting that top end arm. So I don't think I would have done either of these deals.
Yeah, if you're going out and getting that top end arm, I'm totally with you because in that scenario, I'm fine with Lynn and Gibson just eating innings at the back end of your rotation. I can't expect that out of Severino. Severino's thrown 200 innings in the last 5 seasons combined. Oh. We think of Severino as having all of this upside, but the reality is, man, he hasn't been good in 2 years. He hasn't really pitched any meaningful games in 5 years. That's Jack Flaherty. Like, that's who Luis Severino is Jack Flaherty with even less availability. I don't want that. I'm good. Give me something that is a little more certainty. That's what I would prefer to have going into next year. So I do like Nick Martinez, and if you could have had him, probably would have taken him over one of the two guys that you ended up signing, probably Lance Lynn. But I understand the personality side of things is also a big part of why they did this. All right, Alex, final thing here before we get to Joey Vitale on the other side. Is there any scenario where the Blues lose the Ryan O'Reilly trade with Buffalo? Is there something Tage Thompson could do that would make you feel like, they ended up actually losing that trade?
Nope, because what do we say? Flags fly forever. You got a Stanley Cup out of it. So, no, there's no way that you could lose it. I know it sucks seeing him perform in Nashville right now, and seeing Tage Thompson perform, but Ryan O'Reilly got you a cup.
Joey Vitale next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Let's go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and Bally Sports Midwest. He's Joey Vitale joining us here on the show. Joe, how you doing today, my man?
Joey!
What's up, boys? It's a good day. Buffalo Sabres in town. Pierre Turgeon, Ken Hitchcock at the rink this morning. A lot of cool hockey things happening in St. Louis here, and having a good day. How are you all?
Doing good, Joe. So did you get the chance to talk to Hitch, and did you play against Hitch when he was coaching in the NHL?
Yeah, so he was a coach. We played against him. I think Stars, definitely the Blues. During his tenure here, I played against him here as well, and I had a chance to shake his hand again this morning. And it was great to catch up with him, and saw Pierre Turgeon. He was having a great conversation with Al McGinnis. Didn't want to interrupt him, but some St. Louis greats definitely going to be in the building here tonight. So it should be a wonderful night at the Enterprise Center.
So many memories of Pierre Turgeon, just like I'm sure you have, Joe. But the one that sticks the most is that overtime goal against the Coyotes.
Oh, listen, a huge goal there, and I mean, listen, I know a lot of guys still to this day are number 77.
Yeah,
because of Pierre Turgeon and the number and he had one of those long visors, the way he saw the game, and, of course, a long time in the making for him to become a Hall of Famer. He was one of those players for the last half decade to a decade. You know, I know, Alex, you and I and Curves would always debate as far as players that are not in the Hall of Fame that should. I think not only for Blues fans, but people across the hockey world. And, you know, he's up there. Curtis Joseph's up there. You know, Pete Kachuk were some names always thrown around that were former Blues, and it's great to see him in the Hall where he belongs.
Joe, I've never asked you this. Who was your favorite player growing up?
Great question. You know, honest to God, it was probably John Casey, the goalie, who was a Blue. Which is a weird answer for a lot of people.
That's quite the answer.
I wasn't a goalie, and I'll never forget my brother, who was a goalie. He just had a thing about John Casey when he was playing for the Minnesota North Stars, and I was 7-8 years old at the time, just kind of getting into hockey. And my dad had us go up to watch a Minnesota North Stars game. I want to say I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, so this is probably like 91, 92. I know for a fact it was Mike Modano's rookie year because we go up to Minnesota. We took a little twin-engine propeller jet. My dad was a pilot. He had a buddy who was a pilot. We took this little twin engine up to Minnesota in the middle of the winter. Minnesota North Stars ended up playing the Boston Bruins. We were outside the hotel. I met this young guy. I'll never forget the image of him. You know, long mullet, young guy. And I remember one of the seekers there was saying, "Hey, that's Mike Modano. You're going to want to get his autograph." It was his rookie season. He goes, "He's going to be a player one day." I got Mike Modano's autograph. I don't know where it went. I wish I still had it at the time because it would have been worth a lot of money. I met Mike Modano. Of course, the game happens. The Minnesota North Stars beat the Boston Bruins, and we had a chance to meet John Casey after the game. I just remember what a gentleman he was, and he was so kind to my brother and myself, and asking us a ton of questions. Found my favorite player just through a relationship and a conversation of just getting to meet one of the first, my first pro athletes was John Casey. So I never forget that image, of course. So it was wonderful to meet John, and I have a cool picture in my office of me taking a face-off against Mike Modano. So it was my rookie year, my first NHL camp. It was his final year with the Detroit Red Wings. That was a preseason game. He was wearing number 90 at the time. I'll never forget it because, of course, Gordie Howe's number Detroit was retired, number 9. So he wore number 90, and it's a cool picture at the facility, the Mellon Arena there, where me and Mike Modano, the guy that I got my first NHL autograph from, taking a face-off. So certainly some cool memories, but definitely has to be John Casey. He was just so kind to us and really welcomed us in, which I'll never forget.
And fast forward 26 years later, and you got to meet him in the press box during that cup run and get his autograph. I remember that. You were like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, you got a great memory, Alex. Yeah, he came up there during the broadcast and kind of hung out with us for a little while. And I quickly, when I found out he was coming, I had to go through the archive.
Yep.
And I found a photo of me. I had no front teeth. I had a goofy. I had like ketchup stains on my Minnesota North Stars jersey. And I said, "Dad, look at this!" And he couldn't believe it. But I told him the whole story meeting him, and of course he was flattered by that. And still hanging around St. Louis is John Casey. So it's always great to see him whenever I catch up with him at the rink.
Also also a good reminder of the impact that one meeting with somebody can have on a young person, an individual, or whatever. That's awesome, man. Really cool story. We're talking to Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and Bally Sports Midwest. Joe, let's talk a little bit about the Blues as they head into tonight's game against the Buffalo Sabres here at Enterprise Center. It's been an up and down season, but I would say through 21 games, about a quarter of the way through the year, if you had told me before the season they'd be right in the playoff mix, I probably would have signed up for it at this point in time. How would you assess, the 10,000-foot view of the first quarter of the season for the Blues?
Well, BK, I think it's a really good assessment on your end. I think it's a very fair assessment. I feel the exact same way. I think every fan should feel the same way. I think every Blues player is almost the expectations of heading into the year. I think they're right there. Have they, shot short of their expectations? No. Have they overshot the expectations? No. I think this is exactly where they kind of felt like they were. I think a lot of people projected them to be a wild card team at the end, and that's where they're at. They're at the wild card spot. So we're a quarter of the way into the season. I think there's a lot of really good. I think there's stuff about. I think the good is that this team has caught on to this new system fairly quickly, and I think they know exactly what it looks like. To me, that's the positive. Another positive is when things start to go astray, and I mentioned this in the broadcast the other day, this coaching staff and Craig Berube have such a good grasp on what's going wrong and how to auto-correct it, and they've had very, very positive bounce-back games. So I think it's really just about finding consistently those issues, which I think that they're on the cusp of doing. That's the good. The scary part about where they're at when you talk about just flat-out standings, the scary part for me is I'm over there watching that Minnesota game the other night. That Minnesota Wild is a good hockey team. I'm telling you right now, they got some goaltending issues with Gustafsson and Marc-Andre Fleury. It's been a little bit sporadic for those two guys, but that is a doggone good hockey team, and they didn't even have Ryan Hartman. That's what's discerning about this division, because here you are, Minnesota. You're looking at Minnesota as a bottom team right now, just above the Chicago Blackhawks. I think the Chicago Blackhawks are a bad hockey team in this division. I don't think they're ever going to be very good in this division this year. I just don't see it happening. But to me, every other team is going to be right there to the end. I didn't think Minnesota was a team at the beginning. You look at their record, they lost 5 in a row. They sat at 5-10 when we came into the building. I haven't seen them play. Even talking to Bernie Federko this morning at the rink, he was super impressed by how hard the Minnesota Wild, but they just haven't got very much good goaltending. So that kind of goes to show you that Minnesota, even though they're towards the bottom of this division, they're a team that's gonna be there to the end. The Nashville Predators, they're on a tear. Last I checked, I think they won 6 in a row. Yep. So all of a sudden, they're a great hockey team. We saw them last week, Alex and PK. That was a doggone good hockey team in St. Louis and just bully the Blues around. So you look at where they stand. There's a lot of positive things. There's a lot of up, I would say. But to me, the downside is kind of what's out of this team's control, which is this division. It's going to be a dogfight to the very end. And even those teams towards the bottom, they're below the Blues. We've seen them with the Nashville Predators and the Minnesota Wild specifically. Those are good hockey teams, and they're going to be there in the fight just as well.
These home games are huge. They have another one tonight against the Buffalo Sabres. Joey will be watching. We'll be listening to you on the call with Chris Kerber tonight. Pre-game coverage with you and Alex starts at 6 o'clock, and then Puck Drop with you and Curbs coming up tonight at 7. Appreciate the time as always, man. A belated happy Thanksgiving to you and the family. We'll talk with you again next week, my man.
Hey, sounds good, fellas. Always enjoy our chats, and we'll talk to you guys next Thursday. You guys have a great weekend.
Same to you. That's Joey Vitale joining us as he does each and every Thursday here on the show, normally at 11:30. Today we had a little bit of an audible because, Sarris joined us earlier today at 11:30. Alex, I do want to stick with the Blues here for just a moment. Jeremy Rutherford tweeted out the lines earlier today. They've shaken these up a bit. Mm-hmm. Now, no surprise, Jakub Vrana not a part of them. He's going to be what appears to be a healthy scratch in the press box later on this evening. It is Booch, Thomas, and Neighbors once again as your top line. They have Hayes as a winger with Braden Shin and Jordan Kyrou. The third line tonight, at least based on what they did on Morning Skate today, Brandon Saad on one wing, Kapanen on the other, Oscar Sundqvist centering the third line. And then the fourth line tonight, Toropchenko, Alexandrov, and Sonny Blay. Alex, what do you think about that combination of players?
I'm very curious about the Hayes, Shen, and Kyrou line. Obviously, Hayes isn't the fastest skater out there, but what he does well is he holds on to the puck and he possesses it. They're really trying to get Jordan Kyrou going. And the other factor into this is it does tell you that they are really searching for another top 6 winger, because Saad obviously must not be it for them. Kapanen, although he's played well, is not kind of producing the way that they need him to. So to take a guy who was like 68% on the season from the faceoff dot and make him a winger, it tells you that they're trying to get top heavy in the top 6.
So I know there's going to be pushback on this, and I get it. I am not saying that this is the thing that's going to save the
You're going to make Jamie Rivers blow you up again on the air.
That's fair. It's fine. I don't know that they should do this, but clearly what's happening right now is not working with Jakub Vrana. Alex, there was a piece earlier today on The Athletic about what the market looks like for Phil Kessel. My man's 36 years old.
There's not a market.
He's not playing right now, but he played 82 games last year for Vegas. They ended up winning the Cup with him as a part of their roster. He scored 14 goals for them. The Blues right now could use a guy that could put 15 pucks in the back of the net by the end of the season. Would you explore it?
I would, but on the other hand, I would rather just give the opportunity to somebody in the minor leagues for you. Okay. Like you're in this in between.
But do they have anybody in the minors that projects to be?
The dude's got 13 goals in Adam Gaudette. Why wouldn't you give him a chance? He's never going to be a top 6 forward. Fine.
That's the problem. Like Phil Kessel, I don't think is a top 6 forward.
No, he's not.
Right now.
He played 4th line for Vegas.
He can play 3rd line for you on this team right now. Like look at who's in the lineup.
Do you really need another slow forward though?
I mean, you've got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Currently.
Do you want to add to it?
Sure. Right now, Kevin Hayes is playing wing for you because of how desperate you are. If I, instead of having Kevin Hayes on that line, had Brandon Saad with Shen and Kyrou, dropped Hayes down, took Alexandrov out of the lineup.
That's the problem.
And put Hayes with Kapanen and Phil Kessel, like, I don't think it's great. Don't get me wrong. I certainly don't think
the problem's not the 3rd line. It's the 2nd line. And you're putting Saad in that spot who's not producing for you.
Maybe, but I mean, Saad's a top 9 winger in some capacity. There isn't a top 6 winger that's going to be available. Adam Gaudette is not that guy for you. No. If you bring Gaudette up, he's probably going to be playing 3rd line winger anyways. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. If you want to give Gaudette that first chance, cool, fine by me. I got no problem with it. But I'd be at least exploring this. I mean, he's not going to cost you anything.
What I'd be doing is I'd be exploring some type of move to get a player who's been healthy scratch for another NHL team with Jakub Vrana. And I don't know who that is. Sounds like a great Ferrario 5 tomorrow, T-Bone, so get ready for that one. But that's what you're in this like You're in this like mid-season, pre-trade deadline trade season, because typically you see these moves prior to the December 31st mark or the Christmas break, and then you get the waiting period until the trade deadline. I'd be exploring. I mean, we just saw Anthony Beauvillier from the Vancouver Canucks get traded to Chicago for a 5th-round pick.
I would have done that.
I would have done that. So
I think he's making real money, though.
No, yeah, I think he's making like $4 million, so you couldn't have pulled it off. But there's got to be somebody like that who has fallen out of favor with their team that you can make some type of hockey move. That's what I would do over a Phil Kessel. If you're telling me Phil Kessel, honestly, I'd bring Zachary Bolduc up and give him a taste for 5 to 6 games.
He's ready.
Probably not.
He's not even producing in the AHL, and he's a guy that I want to have the experience down there to continue developing. I think bringing him up actually does him more harm than good.
And that's why I would just go.
Gaudette has no. Yeah, let's be honest. He doesn't have a future here in a meaningful way. So, like,
but does he bring you a spark?
Yeah, and he's played NHL minutes before, so maybe he's a guy that you could go that route with, but. I mean, is there somebody on Chicago? Maybe. I don't know.
Probably.
Are any of these really, like Ottawa, do they have somebody that is maybe a 3rd line winger that can play 14 minutes a night for you that is not doing anything for them right now, and they're on the outside looking in?
Or you look at the San Jose Sharks and you go after like a guy like Anthony Duclair and you say Duclair, or you call up the New York Islanders and find out they need offense. Do you have something that could go this way? There's got to be some type of change of scenery move that you could pull off that doesn't include a Phil Kessel.
So the trade board has been posted, Alex, over on the Athletics website.
Okay.
What about Alexander Barabanov?
Barbanov? Is he from San Jose Sharks?
Yeah.
Sure.
He's making $2.5 million. He's a unrestricted free agent. He's fine. He is 24th on their big board.
He had 15 goals and 47 points last season. There's a guy that you can target and you could bring in and you say, we need a winger. Something like that. There's
4th round pick.
There's somebody on a team, which again, maybe I'll explore this later on tonight. Minnesota wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Now they're starting to win. So, and Minnesota's
won a game.
No, but
I'm with you. You're
they
right.
got a new coach. Like you're gonna start performing a little bit better. And like Joe mentioned, like they have been a decent team offensively. It's been goaltending that's really hurt them. You got to be looking at teams at the bottom. The Columbus Blue Jackets. Do they want to try and move on from somebody because they're at the bottom? The Montreal Canadiens. Teams that need a spark on offense. See if there's something available to you that you could bring in to be a depth piece on your squad.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll give our pick'em for the upcoming week. We are starting a new month, which means that we will be picking games going into this weekend for the first time, and we'll see who ends up coming out ahead by this time next week. We'll get into that in about 15 minutes or so, but next, there are some new updates on the Bally Sports Midwest situation yesterday. We'll give you the latest here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So one of the long, drawn-out storylines that we're monitoring here in St. Louis is what's going to happen with Bally Sports Midwest and what kind of trickle-down effects that could have specifically on the St. Louis Cardinals. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, there was an update yesterday in the St. Louis Business Journal. I'm not going to read it in its entirety because it's behind a paywall, but...
And you don't know how to read.
Also an important disclaimer there as well. Part of it says as follows. Bill DeWitt said he envisions a landscape in which games would be available to cable subscribers through their packages and also through a direct-to-consumer product. DeWitt said that he would split the team's television revenue into two different streams, rights fees for cable distribution and revenue from subscriptions in the direct-to-consumer option. Blue CEO Chris Zimmerman told the Business Journal that he has been watching the situation closely and that he looks at the MLS deal with Apple TV as, quote, the new model, end quote. Alex, the reason why all of that is interesting to me is because of what the Business Journal is reporting. They are suggesting that by the end of the Cardinal season next year, September of 2024, Bally Sports Midwest very well may be no longer. It may be a cut and dried, we are done broadcasting games for both the Cardinals and the Blues by essentially this time next year. It's a big deal, a huge deal, in fact, for both teams. I want to focus a little bit more on the Cardinals side of things, Alex, because they are the ones that have this massive TV rights deal. And unlike the NHL, where all of the teams share their money, there's revenue sharing. Baseball, there's technically revenue sharing, but the Cardinals are not a part of that. They get a good portion of their budget, of their revenue, from their TV rights deals. If this goes away, it is essentially like subtracting, I don't know what the exact number is, but let's say it's 30% of what they bring in on an annual basis, saying, hey, we don't know where that 30% of their revenue is coming from any longer. They'll have some portion of that. Maybe it's all of it. Maybe it's more than that 5 years from now. But in the foreseeable future, we just don't know what that number is going to look like. This has a backdrop that is bigger than just baseball. It's bigger than Bally Sports Midwest. It is sports broadcasting in its entirety. The NBA is facing something similar right now. They are anticipating getting a doubling of their rights fees from Turner and ESPN. All of their media rights deals are up after this year. Well, it doesn't sound like that's likely to happen now. The money is starting to be drawn in a bit by some of these cable subscriber companies because there's fewer people watching on cable. Amin Elhassan is a former NBA executive, Alex, and he reacted yesterday on his podcast to the news that Mark Cuban is going to be selling a majority share of the Dallas Mavericks. He believes this is something that could be a canary in the coal mine type of a situation for sports in general when it comes to the broadcast fees. Take a listen.
That whole streaming money that everyone's been talking about for years, like, oh, when this next TV deal's up, it doesn't even matter if Disney and Turner aren't ponying up. Oh, Amazon and Netflix are going to come in and just dump billions of dollars. That's not been the case. So I think Mark Cuban's looking and he's saying, oh, this is the bubble. And the bubble is about to burst. And Charlotte, it's incredibly important to note that it is Mark Cuban who's doing this and not any other owner. Do you know why? Because do you know how Mark Cuban became a billionaire? Broadcast.com. He founded this thing called Broadcast.com. They pioneered the technology that allows people to stream video on the internet. The reason why you're able to watch anything on your phone, tablet, or computer is because Mark Cuban and the company that he founded. He founded it. And he sold it, and within a few months, the dot-com bubble crashed, and that he made out like a bandit, and everybody else was like pets.com. Like, we're broke. The ship be sinking, and let me get off before everyone starts to figure it out and clamor.
Alex, all of this is happening simultaneously. The NBA is looking for their media rights deal. The MLS just came out with their new subscription model. The Major League Baseball and NHL, the teams that are part of the Bally Sports, Diamond Sports property situation, they're all looking for, oh no, what do we do next? Everybody's in this situation together, and nobody seems to have a firm answer on what the future of sports broadcasting looks like. By the way, that was Amin Elhassan on the Oddball podcast. I think it's an interesting look at what the Mark Cuban decision with his ownership stake could mean in the big picture for the NBA and the trickle-down effect that could have for other sports. I will say this. I think the Cardinals are uniquely situated to actually come out okay, all things considered, in this situation. And the reason why is because they have a massive audience, both locally here in St. Louis and nationally as part of quote-unquote Cardinal Nation. Teams like the Royals or the Padres or the Diamondbacks, where they don't have as significant of an audience that is going to be dialed in, where baseball is not as significant of a ingrained piece of the culture, where if you're not watching Cardinals baseball, you're almost missing out on pop culture moments every single night that take place in the summer here. That's not the case in a lot of these other markets, and they're going to have a tougher time getting people to pay specifically for a subscription to watch their baseball team than what you're going to see here in St. Louis. So I think St. Louis might be okay, all things considered. But, dude, this is one of the biggest stories in all of sports, and it's kind of happening behind the scenes. But that's going to change very soon. This time next year, these leagues need to have something in place where they can say, okay, this is our plan. We're all in with it, and sink or swim, we're going to have to make this thing work.
Yeah, and I think just locally on both the Cardinals and Blue side, I think that rights fee for cable distribution is going to be at least the one that's in front of both teams that say, this might be the way to go, at least short term. But long term, it's exactly what Amin was talking about there, and it's what Bill DeWitt mentioned, the direct-to-consumer options. That's what it's going to be pro sports. It's not about being able to watch it on your local television feed. It's going to be streaming it on your phone, streaming it online so you can watch it wherever you go. And to me, it's going to be attached to the team. The team is going to have sole control over it. Maybe the league has control of it and the teams let them run it, but it's going to be attached to the app. It's going to be attached to where you download the Cardinals or the Blues app and you pay a certain subscription so that you can watch every single game. You get up-to-date content. You're getting all of the coaches and the players' audio. That's, Amin mentioned, what is the future of sports broadcasting? This is kind of it. It's the direct-to-consumer on my phone. I get updates when the coach talks. I get updates when there's line combinations. I get updates when the starting lineup is out. And then I get the stream on the actual broadcast. Pre-game, in-game, post-game, all on my phone. That's what the future of this.
Local. That's the thing that I do think Apple has missed a little bit with MLS, is that it's all national broadcast and it is not specific to any one team.
Yeah.
If I'm watching the Apple broadcast, it is national broadcasters that I'm not as familiar with for my specific team.
Yep.
They don't cover my team throughout the week and then continue to watch them during the games and kind of cheer for them, quote unquote, or follow that specific side of things during the games. It is a national broadcast. It's more NFL generalized as opposed to local broadcasters. That is one thing that I will be curious to see. Are these teams going to do it individually? Or will it be a NFL style where it is, hey, we have these 50 broadcasters and they're going to be scattered across the country over the course of the season? I think it will be more local because that is baseball. Baseball is more that way. I wonder with hockey, are we going to see a simulcast? Are we going to see hey, 101 ESPN is the broadcasting entity of the NHL, and we will use the Chris Kerber, Joey Vitale. That call will be simulcast on the television, and that's the way that we stream these games. There's a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes ways that this stuff is going to affect the way that you watch the games. That is not even necessarily just am I paying for this via cable? Am I paying for it via direct-to-subscriber? All of this could legitimately change the way that we watch sports television.
And all of you mentioned the Padres and the Royals, those smaller market teams, that's where it's going to fall into the lap where certain teams are going to argue, no, we want control of this. We want entity because our market's big enough. But those smaller teams, that's where the league is going to step in and say, yeah, but what are we going to do with these guys? And that's going to be the hard discussion portion of this.
I'm fascinated because I do agree with what you said, BK. It's emotional. I agree with what you said, that I think the Cardinals are going to be a team that probably in theory should be fine when this does occur at this point next year. The small market teams are the one that I'm going to be fascinated to see how 100%. They operate. Because if I'm a fan and it is, hey, pay a subscription to watch Cardinals baseball, but let's use the Royals as the example. What am I watching the Royals for? Don't get me wrong, Bobby Witt's a really good player. He's not worth watching you lose 100 games. How are these small market teams going to operate? How are they going to be able to survive this loss of guaranteed money? Now, I think they can get ways around it. I think they can find a way to get to that point, but it's a lot harder now than it ever was with the deals that they had with these Diamond Sports groups. So I'm fascinated with what the small market teams do. I don't want to say this is better for the game of baseball, but I'll be curious to know if it becomes that way because
Could
small
be better
market
for
teams,
fans. Like if you're an actual baseball fan,
because you have to keep superstar talent. You have to win now to bring people in.
I'm talking just from a viewing perspective. Like from a viewing perspective, I think it could end up being a better thing for you. Like if we're just being totally candid, the Bally Sports Midwest app is difficult to use. It's difficult to handle. It crashes all the time. Like I think it could end up being better for everybody that watches sports on a regular basis. For casual fans, that's where I think it gets tough. Because
Agreed.
right now, it's just a part of your cable package, right? If you go home at the end of the night and you're like, hey, I want to watch Food Network, I want to watch Turner, I want to watch Hallmark Channel, or I've got the option of watching the Blues, you can do that. Even if your family has no interest in watching the Blues, guess what? It's a part of your cable subscription, so it's there anyways. This will be I have to pay, let's say, $20 a month for a Cardinals subscription to be able to watch the Cardinals games. For some people, like the three of us in this room, that's great. Now I can just get rid of my cable company. I don't have to have cable anymore because I've got all the other stuff that I want. The reason I still have cable is for Bally Sports Midwest. So for us, it probably saves us money. For a lot of people out there, though, that are more on the casual side of things, it may be seen as a significant expense that they don't otherwise have to have. They're like, you know what, am I going to pay $20 a month for Cardinals baseball, for Blues hockey? Maybe not.
And what I was getting at too, because you're right on that point too, is you have to be good if you're going to draw in viewers. People don't, even if you're a diehard fan, you may not pay $20. Like, let's just be honest. September, you think people would pay, the diehard Cardinal fan would pay $20 to watch Drew Rom and the Cardinals beat up rotation last year, throwing just the final months, just trying to get through those games? No, we didn't even want to watch them. So that is the part that I'm going to be fascinated by is, do these smaller market teams, do they become more of like, you know what, we kind of have to hold on to our talent now. We can't no longer be like, oh, okay, well, we got to let them go. We got to tear it down. We got to restart, because then you're really going to be losing money. You don't have that guaranteed money to fall back on. You have to actually work, put a legitimate product on the field to not just draw in the casual fan, but still draw in the diehard fan.
Somebody on the text line brings up what is actually like a really interesting point. They said, imagine if the Cardinals ended up signing a Japanese superstar that could grow their fans overseas as well. That might be something that teams start taking into effect as well. Man, whoever ends up signing Shohei Ohtani will immediately have, like, if they go to this direct-to-consumer product and it's available worldwide, I mean, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of subscribers.
Yamamoto's going to bring in a ton of people.
That is a really interesting point that I hadn't really
Cardinals
considered.
had that with Nootbaar. International superstar at this point, I would say.
It's something that, I mean, he was just named GQ Man of the Year over in Japan. It is something that I would imagine will be taking into account. Like, if you have Bryce Harper as the face of your franchise right now, nationally in America, that's something that you can sell as a part of your product. Ronald Acuna Jr. is somebody that you can sell. The same thing may end up being true overseas if you bring over a superstar from Japan. I mean, a lot of these guys that come over end up having specific reporters that are a part of your team, basically. We saw last year when Shohei came, I think we went to the game, T-Bone, against the Angels, and you saw all of the reporters that were there for him. It's crazy, man. Lars Nootbaar, we saw it whenever Lars came back from the World Baseball Classic. There was like 10 or 15 different Japanese reporters that came just to talk to Lars Nootbaar on opening day, and then he didn't play because he was hurt, which I felt horrible about. Thousands of miles across the sea and just not end up seeing it. But anyways, it's a big story. I think the Cardinals are uniquely positioned to be able to maneuver in this space, but for a lot of teams across Major League Baseball, it could change the way that they have to operate, for better or for worse. I'm not sure which one is more likely for a lot of these teams. Coming up next, our football pick'em here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they'll be taking on the Buffalo Sabres. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffautoPlex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's time for our football pick'em. We normally do these on Friday, but I'm out tomorrow.
Oh, what else is new? Geez, you guys take vacations every other week.
That's right. I'm going out to Denver. My grandmother will be meeting her great-grandchild for the first time this weekend.
Likely excuse
We're
for you not
celebrating
going
Thanksgiving
anywhere.
plus Christmas together. So I'm looking forward to it. Baby boy is going on his second trip that he's ever taken with us.
We all know why you're going to Denver.
He travels more than me.
I don't have to do that anymore, man. Everything's legal across the United States now, man.
Sports betting is what I was talking about.
I don't think is that legal out there? I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I hope so. All right. So if it is, I'm going to be
while you're
making
doing
my
other
picks.
illegal activities.
That's right. It's illegal, man. It's legal. Let's get to our football pick'em. I won the last month. T-Bone came in second. Alex was a distant third, unfortunately. Alex, would you like to pick first, second, or third? I'll give you the choice.
I'll go third.
T-Bone, would you like to pick first or second?
Why not? I'll go first.
YOLO!
Okay. You can go off the top. The way that this works, if you're new to the show,
rope.
We will give you our 3 favorite picks going into the weekend. It's all against the spread. No props, no over-unders, nothing like that. Just against the spread, NFL or college football related. Has to be done by the time that we get on the show on Monday morning. So, T-Bone, what is your first pick?
All right, so my 1-point play, I'm going to the college side, and I'm going to the SEC championship game. Guys, Bama's been playing well. Don't poke the Bulldog, though. The Bulldogs are going to roll through the Tide, and they're going to get into the college football playoff. I think they win this one by at least a touchdown. This point spread's moved down even from yesterday when I looked down to just 6. I like that.
5.5 on DraftKings if you'd like the 5.5.
I even like the 5.5 more.
No, sorry, you get it at 6.
I would bet your kid's college fund on that. No, don't really do that.
I hope that loses.
The reason why I know that it is 5.5 in favor of Georgia right now is because it is my 3-point play. I love the Bulldogs. Minus the 5.5 points. Getting them under 6, I think, is the key number here. Getting them under the 6 points is where you want to find them. So over on the DraftKings Sportsbook, that is where you can find it. I love Georgia. I think they roll. This ain't Roll Tide. This is Go Bulldogs. Alex, what do you have as your 1-point play?
All right, 1-point play, boys. I'm not touching the college football slate because, frankly, I suck at that like I suck at the NFL. But I'll stay in the NFL. My 1-point play, I'm taking the Jets plus 1.5. Here's why. Because Desmond Ridder sucks at being a quarterback, and you really suck at being a quarterback against a very good defense. Now, I know the QB sucks on the other side, but I'll bet my money that the defense has a massive impact in that game against the Falcons, and you just run the ball, and you're probably better off against Atlanta. So Jets plus 1.5 is my 1-point play.
Don't the Falcons have a decent defense, too? Like, their secondary is just solid.
Yeah, but
I mean, both teams stink, so I have no problem with that. Okay. If you just want to take the underdog in the game, I get it.
That's what I did.
That's basically the entire NFL slate for me. That's
crap on crap.
If you want to take either side of any of these games on the NFL slate this weekend, I get it. It's a really terrible NFL slate this weekend.
Awful. So my 2-point play, I'm sticking in college. Guys, Iowa doesn't know football, they know punting. That's all they know, punting. They don't know football. They have set football back 50 years. They know corn as well. Michigan's favored by 22. Give me Michigan minus 22. Last time Iowa played a top 25 team, only top 25 team on their schedule was Penn State. They crushed them 31-0. Michigan took care of Penn State, so give me Michigan minus the 22 points.
I was going to surprise you guys and make it seem like I didn't have a college football game until I got to the 3-point play. That's my 3-point play. I don't even think Iowa scores a point in this game. I think this is going to just be over by the first quarter, so a 3-point for me is Michigan minus 22.
Their over-under for the first half is 0.5. The Vegas point total for Iowa in the first half of a game, in the championship game, a 10-win team, is will they score a point? It's basically a yes or no prop. Will they score a point? Yes is plus money. It's unbelievable. I like the pick for both of you. It was one of the games that I considered. I didn't end up going in that direction, but I like it. My 1-point play is also in the college football slate. I've been talking about Washington all season long. I think they're one of my favorite teams to watch. However, I think Oregon has been arguably the best team in all of college football down the stretch. I would probably take Georgia over them head-to-head, but in a very, very close game.
But you hate their quarterback.
I like their quarterback. I don't think he's the Heisman Trophy winner. Oregon minus 9.5 is a lot considering how great Washington has been for most of the season, but I'm worried about their defense. I'm worried about the health of Michael Penix Jr. I'm going to take Oregon as my 1-point play minus the 9.5 points.
I thought about it. I just couldn't psych myself up.
Yeah, 9.5
to really
scares
take
me.
either side because I was like, okay, could Washington cover?
That feels like a touchdown final score.
I know, but I could see like one bad bounce making it where you lose.
Yeah.
All right, so my 3-point
It was
play.
Slim Pickens in the Pick'em this week.
Yeah, well, you could have gone like Conference USA game if you wanted, like anything.
I do like SMU this weekend against Tulane.
Oh, I'm glad to know who's playing because I had no idea. I was just throwing that conference out there.
It was the AAC. It's a different conference, but
I won't watch that game either. I'm going to the NFL slate for Sunday for my 3-point play, and I'm going to the Sunday Night Football game. Everybody's all in. Jordan Love, he's been playing better. He's going to meet the Chiefs defense this week. He's not going to be playing better after this weekend. Give me the Chiefs minus 6 points at the Green Bay Packers. I think they roll through them. I don't even think it's close.
Speaking of meeting a team's defense, hey, Kyler, welcome to Pittsburgh. Because I think T.J. Watt is going to be down his throat the entire time. That's my 2-point play. It's minus 5.5. Pittsburgh at home with the way that defense is playing, and now that they got rid of their offensive coordinator, Kenny Pickett all of a sudden actually throws the ball. I think that's going to be an easy one for the Steelers.
All right, last one. I have the NFL slate as well. Guys, I understand that the 49ers have been excellent this year. A 3-point favorite on the road in Philadelphia when Philly is 10-1 on the season? I don't know, man. That seems like a little bit too much respect for the 49ers. Give me the Eagles plus 3 points at home. This is just a principle thing, man. If I'm getting maybe the best team in the NFL as a home underdog by 3 points or more, I've got to take it. So I'm going to take the Eagles plus the 3. I think they've got a really good shot to win this game outright. I think that they've got a tough time scoring against that 49ers defense. I think it could be a lower scoring game than people are currently anticipating. 24-23, give me the Eagles to win outright. They definitely cover the 3-point spread. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Is that an eagle?
A dying eagle.
I think it was a crow.
What's that?
Yeah, shot from the sky. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you want to fade our picks, if you want to follow them, you can do that this weekend. We will certainly check in on Monday.
Show us the parlay.
How
of what all of them against us look like, because that's got to be a lot of money.
I'll go ahead and check in on what that is. We'll get into it coming up next in the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's dive into the junk drawer with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Alex, the Tampa Bay Times is doing something for Festivus this year. If you share a complaint with them, they're going to print it in the Tampa Bay Times.
Awesome.
Do you have any specific complaints or grievances that have taken place in your life recently? I feel like you have to.
You threw this one at me with no prep because, man, I could have given you a laundry list of this one.
I just wanted one that immediately came to mind for you.
Man, how many more?
I've got one for you.
I was going to say, because
that happened to me the other day, and Alex, I feel like I'm becoming a grumpy old man based upon some of the recent complaints that I've had on the air.
Okay, give me a sec. Yeah, go with yours because I'll give you a couple.
So, yesterday, I'm driving home, and we live next to an elementary school. So kids are coming out at, 2:30, 3 o'clock when they're leaving school. No problem. They want to cross the crosswalk, cool. No harm, no foul.
BK absolutely honks at kids when they're trying to walk
absolutely
across the
not.
street.
I in fact, tell them go ahead so that way there's not some lunatic who's going to drive and not stop at the stop sign as you're trying to cross a crosswalk. I've got no problem with it. However, the other day, this had nothing to do with the kid. The kid did nothing wrong. But I'm driving home and I'm on this main road. We're like 3 blocks away from the school. And this car just stops. Doesn't put on its flashers, doesn't do anything, just stops in the middle of the street. It's a 1-lane street going towards my house. They stop, and I see somebody walking in the other direction towards their car coming down this hill. They're still probably, 100 feet away from the car. It's not like they're right there. But they stop in the middle of the street, and they're waiting for this person to come and get into the car. Alex, that is not how we operate. This is a society, my man. Get off on the next street. He was like maybe 20 feet away from an intersection where you could get off of the main road and get onto the intersection. Or just put on your flashers. I got no problem with it if you've got your flashers going. What are people doing, man? I never used to complain this much about the way that others drive.
Just gets worse, man. It's kids. Because you're like trying to raise them with the right actions. These days. No, it's not that.
This person that was inside was a mother. She's probably,
was she
50
a mother
years old.
what?
Not going there.
Just a mother. Okay.
Seems like a fine individual other than what was an obviously terrible decision.
Give it like
in
6 more months. You'll get there. I got a couple that just came to mind as you were talking. Wow. That's a really good one.
A couple. I came up with one.
Well, go ahead, T-Bone.
I've brought this one up on here before. I think you were out, and it really made me hate BK. But it's the I have the community laundry room. I brought this up. The people that leave their stuff in there and don't come and get it. Those people
leave their clothes.
Yeah, so they'll do it and the timer goes off, but it sits there forever.
That's when you take it out of the wash and you put it in a basket.
I did that one time. He told me you shouldn't do that. You got to wait for me to come get my clothes.
If you're not standing at your clothes, you're an idiot.
That's why I said I hate him.
What an idiot! Who does that?
That guy.
You're a jerk, man.
BK wants everybody to operate on BK time.
Oh yeah, bleep you. No way. I take it out and I put it in a basket, and when they come in, be like, "Where'd you put my stuff?" Because you stay in the laundry room until the stuff is done, and you put it in the damn dryer.
Yeah.
Okay, now mine, and now you're going to hear about it. First of all, you're talking about stopping in the middle of traffic made me think of this. Anybody who goes to concerts, sporting events, when you're commuting with everybody and standing in the middle of the walkway, can you do it to the side? Why do we have to stop in a big huddle of people when you know people are walking one way or the other? Why does your group get the opportunity to just stand in the middle of the walkway and talk?
Are you talking about like the group of people that lines up horizontally?
Yes. Just move it to the damn side of the wall and stand there where you're supposed to be talking.
That's
or
BK's
just
group.
Go in pairs, right? Like if you're going to be in a group, that's totally cool, but just have like 2 or 3 of you next to
while I'm on it,
we don't need to be shoulder to shoulder going side to side.
And while I'm on it, can we stop with the anarchy in these places? There's one direction to walk and one direction to walk. If you're walking this way, you walk on the right side. If you're walking this way, you walk on the right side. Stay to the right, man. Don't walk on the left when other people are going the other direction. You're just a jerk. One more for you guys. Can anybody that grocery shops just have your damn card out ready to go?
Grocery store, man.
Have your damn card out ready to go. What is the point?
What's the issue here?
Are
you upset the moment I go to reach in my back pocket to grab it?
Because when you put the groceries up on the whatchamacallit, the thing that slides it forward for the cashier to check out, Why do you have to wait for her to scan everything and then pull your card out?
I mean, it takes 2 seconds.
No, it doesn't, because individuals that have to dig into their purse and can't find it in their wallet and like, oh, sorry, I don't know where it is. Just have it out ready to go. You know what I do? I put it in my pocket when I walk into the damn grocery store.
If only everybody was more like Alex.
If you just save time. If you just say, oh, act like I'm the only one complaining. You brought up the damn conversation. Hit Jerry Stiller for me.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, it's time for a Cardinals offseason
Roundup! Yeah!
Here on 101 ESPN. For our favorite segment here on BK and Ferrario, the Cardinals offseason
Roundup. Wasn't ready for that one.
All right, 5 and first big news for the day. Luis Severino, a 1-year, $13 million deal with the Mets. Now, Alex, I want to say this on the front end. I'm going to assume he just wanted to live in New York. He's going over from the Yankees to the Mets. He probably doesn't even have to move. So, I don't think he was ever actually an option for the Cardinals. However, if he was available to the Cardinals, would you rather have Severino or the two back-end starters that they got roughly around the same price?
I'd rather have Severino. I think he's got the swing and miss stuff that we were talking about. Now, I know that was back in like 2018. He's been injured for the last 4 seasons, but we said the same thing about Cody Bellinger. We said, well, something's not right, and it obviously looked right when he got to Chicago. What?
Don't feel like it's fair to compare Luis Severino to Cody Bellinger, but fair enough.
Why? Both stunk for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, hey, they're good.
Bellinger won the MVP.
Yeah, and Luis Severino was in Cy Young voting 4 years ago. Back-to-back years. Yeah. You watch. Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn have a 4+ ERA. Luis Severino is going to be around 3.5.
Yeah, if he was back-to-back All-Star, I'm probably underestimating how good he was.
Dude,
That's fair.
Dude's got swing and miss stuff.
I did the well-actually thing where I was the one that was wrong. Good for you.
You know what? I got another thing to complain about for Festivus season.
I would actually rather have Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, just because they have been healthy over the last couple of years. And when you look at Lynn, you look at him and you go, hey, man, if you could just fix the home run problem, that's a big fix. But
I was going to say, if only you could fix the problem if you give the ball up.
2 years ago, he was still a very effective pitcher. Luis Severino, like you said earlier, has covered, 200 innings in like 5 years?
It's 209 innings since the start of the 2019 season.
Yeah, no thanks.
He has a 93 ERA+, which is 7% below league average in those innings. For context, since 2019, Kyle Gibson has thrown 770 innings and has the exact same ERA+. So the same quality in those innings. Severino's thrown 200 of them. Kyle Gibson has thrown almost 800. I'll take the guaranteed innings. I get the upside argument for Severino. I just think that the Cardinals should be aiming higher for those upside innings.
You did aim higher, and you got Sonny Gray.
Now going out and getting Cease, Robbie Ray.
Yeah, but we're not talking about those guys. You still go get those guys. I'm talking about Lynn and Gibson.
Right, but I think if you acquire one of those guys, it makes me even more comfortable with the back-end starters that you acquired, and I would rather have them than Severino, especially if it's Glasnow. Like, if this team added Glasnow and Severino, I would have serious questions about where they're getting their innings from if they did not also then go out and get Lynn and or Gibson.
You watch.
Let's continue along with our Cardinals offseason
Roundup. He pissed me off.
Howdy, partner. There's a snake in my boot.
Alex,
Somebody's poisoned the water hole.
Starting pitcher / reliever that signed earlier today is Nick Martinez. He signed a 2-year deal worth $26 million with the Cincinnati Reds. This was their response to the Cardinals taking Sonny Gray away from them because they were one of the finalists for Sonny Gray. Would you rather have Martinez or the two guys that the Cardinals signed?
They just didn't go from scuba diving to snorkeling. They went from scuba diving to let's just put a straw in our face and stick our head in the bathtub, and that's what we just got with Nick Martinez. I would much rather have Lynn or Gibson than Nick Martinez. I think Nick Martinez should just be a swing guy. I don't think he should be one of the people you should rely on in your rotation. And as much as I've given it to Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, at least those guys can be somebody you can rely on all season long. I'm not sure Nick Martinez can.
Yeah, like I wouldn't have minded Nick Martinez if you were bringing him in if you were only going to go with 3 pitchers this offseason. And what I mean by that is if you sign one of Lynn and Gibson, Gray, and then acquire that top-tier guy, then he makes sense as the swingman. But the way the Cardinals are thinking, I like it even better because I like Steven Matz's stuff better than Nick Martinez. If you're going to go get that top-end guy already and you kind of switch Matz from being a 4 or 5 starter to becoming the swingman. I like that better than Nick Martinez on the deal that he got.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. If you're telling me you can sign one of the 2 guys that you ended up getting or Nick Martinez, I see how you would rather have Nick Martinez, but the role that he's going to fill is the one that's currently taking place by Steven Matz. If you're just telling me straight up, would you rather have Steven Matz next year or Nick Martinez? I'll bet on the upside of Steven Matz. I know that sounds crazy because Matz has struggled here and certainly has not stayed healthy here. But I think he's a slightly better pitcher. He's got better stuff than what Nick Martinez does. So I'm fine with the route that the Cardinals ended up going. Let's continue with our Cardinals offseason
Roundup. Yeah!
I'd like to win, bullseye.
The Dodgers have serious interest in Seth Lugo. What do you think about him as a match for the LA Dodgers?
Well, he's a little younger than everybody else they got in their rotation, so that makes sense.
I like Seth Lugo for them. I think the Dodgers are going to end up signing or trading for 3 pitchers this offseason. I think they're going to get Dylan Cease. I think they got a pretty decent shot with one of Yamamoto or Shohei Ohtani. I know he's not going to pitch for them next year, but he can pitch eventually. And then I think they end up getting like a Seth Lugo type. So I think they know they need innings. They are desperate for those right now. Lugo would be a good fit for them.
I like the fit of Lugo going to L.A. They saw him last year in San Diego, so they got a good close-up look at him. He makes sense. Bring him in. He's kind of like that number 3, 4-star for you. I thought he made sense for the Cardinals if they were going to look and go with like a multi-year deal for their number 5. Instead, they wanted the less years on it so they can get out of it and hopefully fill that next year with younger talent. But yeah, Lugo going to the Dodgers, he makes sense. I think you're right. They're probably looking at 2-3 guys. And don't be surprised if they miss out on Cease. They pivot towards a Glasnow type starter.
Next thing up in our baseball offseason.
Roundup, let's dance, partner.
Man, I could tell your voice was going on that one.
I'm getting a little lightheaded. I haven't eaten properly, and the coffee's kicking in, so I hope we only have like one more in our roundup.
MLB Network insider JP Morosi. We got 3 more. JP Morosi.
It's going to be round.
Reported yesterday that trade talks involving White Sox right-handed pitcher Dylan Cease have, quote, intensified over the past couple of days. And people close to the negotiations believe a deal before the winter meetings is increasingly likely. Alex, the winter meetings start early next week. December 3rd is the first day of the winter meetings. By the way, they're in Nashville this year, which feels kind of weird.
We should go with our cowboy hats.
Maybe that's why, thought we were going.
I'm guessing it is. He's like, hey, are you guys going to drive the 4 hours that it takes to get to Nashville?
I did it for the draft. Let's go.
We should talk to corporate about it. I'm sure they would pay for our hotel.
I don't go vacations with you, man.
I feel like we'd have a really good time together in Nashville, man.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to
You and I would. He'd be in bed.
I'll talk to Kara. I'm sure she wouldn't mind taking the kids taking
the kids. You got 2 of them?
Freudian slip. Luka for the next 3 days next week after we just get back from vacation. Speaking of Dylan Cease, though, where do you think he's most likely to go?
I don't think it's the Cardinals. I think it might be a team like the Dodgers. I could see the Dodgers pulling that one off. I don't think it's a team in the American League, so you're looking at National League. Dodgers, I could see the Cubs jumping into this race if they don't feel like they can get any of these other guys. Anybody who falls out of that Tyler Glasnow sweepstakes is going to be the one that sweeps in for Dylan Cease. I'll say either Dodgers or Cubs make a lot of sense.
I kind of feel like it's going to be a smaller market team. It makes more sense because you can't go out, you can't sign one of those guys. So like
the Royals,
the Reds,
no, the
not
Royals.
The Royals. Are you kidding me?
The Royals need talent before they start trading.
The Reds would be the one.
I think Reds, Baltimore feels like a sneaky team that's going to keep an eye on. Baltimore didn't want to part with prospects at the deadline, so I don't know if they're going to be willing to do it. The Reds feel interesting. They're the team that needs to make that splash. I heard Bowden said that when he was on with us. Cease would be that splash. You get Cease and Hunter Green to lead that rotation. You got some decent armors behind them. And now you got Nick Martinez, who sounds like he's going to be a starter there. I don't know. Keep an eye on the Reds. I think the Reds are interesting, but I think it might be the Dodgers that may go after
Especially signing Nick Martinez. That seems like what the Cardinals did with Lyndon Gibson, and now they make their move for the Sonny Gray.
I think it ends up being the Dodgers or the Orioles. I think the Orioles are a team to watch here. They've got those are the 2 best farm systems in all of Major League Baseball, according to all the experts that know such a thing. So they've got the quantity and the quality to trade from their depth. A lot of people are talking about the Braves. Guys, I don't know who the Braves would offer in this kind of a deal. Like, Vaughn Grissom is probably the quote-unquote headliner in such a deal. There's a lot of other teams across Major League Baseball that could offer somebody better in a package than Vaughn Grissom. Like, the Cardinals could do it without even offering Nolan Gorman as a better piece in this kind of a deal. So I don't think Atlanta ends up acquiring him. I think it's the Dodgers. I think it's the Orioles. And if the Cardinals really wanted to go in and put Nolan Gorman, I think they've got the chance to be able to offer the best Major League ready player that anybody in these conversations could offer. I just don't think they should.
And that's where I think the Jonathan India sweepstakes comes into play. Can you outbid Jonathan India without Nolan Gorman?
Probably not.
And that's where I think the Cardinals are going to have to get to the puke point, which nobody really wants to.
All right, last thing here for our Major League Baseball offseason.
Roundup, yeah!
Juan Soto is increasingly likely to be traded. There was a piece earlier today on MLB.com about which team is the best fit for him. No surprise, the Yankees were at number 1 on this list. Guys, if it doesn't end up being the Yankees, which I think everybody kind of believes is going to be the case, if the Yankees do not trade for Juan Soto, who do you think, forget should trade for Juan Soto? Who do you think should end up acquiring one of the best most disciplined hitters that we have ever seen in the history of baseball.
I think it should be the Cubs. I mean, because they're going big game hunting, and if you want Shohei Ohtani, great. If you're trying to get after Yamamoto, but Juan Soto makes that outfield dangerous. I mean, you've got Suzuki, you'd have Ian Happ, and then you put Juan Soto out there on top of having a really good lineup. That screams like a Craig Counsell welcome to the Cubs kind of move. So I would say the Cubs, and frankly, I think that makes the NL Central battle between Cardinals and Cubs a lot more entertaining.
Yeah, I like the Cubs as one. I'm going to throw one out that I know they mentioned in the piece, but they haven't been talked about and connected to them. Blue Jays, man, they got to go all in. Like, this feels like the final year of that run. Guerrero's getting close to being a free agent. So is Bo Bichette. Like, they have talent. They've got pitching, too. I mean, Manoah's could be like their 5 or 6 going into next year, and they're hoping for the bounce back in his upside. So they feel like a team that could use a little bit more offense. I would like to see Toronto do it. Go all in, push your chips in one time here. He's only going to be a rental. If I'm Toronto, I would make that move.
I don't know that this team has the farm system to make it possible, but yo, San Francisco, this is your shot. Like, if we're talking about Cody Bellinger as the star that you're likely to acquire as a position player this offseason, turn your attention elsewhere. Just trade for Juan Soto and then re-sign him after the season and give him whatever it takes. The guy is a legitimate superstar. Cody Bellinger is really good. I have no idea how that contract's going to age. It is very likely to age poorly. Juan Soto, I know he's got a discernible skill that's as good as anybody who's ever played the game. He walks better than just about anybody not named Ted Williams. So if you want to go out there and get yourself somebody that can be the face of your franchise for the next 10 to 15 years, Juan Soto is that guy. They're not being talked about a lot. They're kind of on the tertiary of these talks. The San Francisco Giants, if they have the prospect capital to do so, should not just be a team in the mix. They should be the favorite to land him. They have to get themselves a superstar.
I don't know if Preller will do it. I don't think Preller will trade him in the division.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Pay whatever it takes.
I get it,
man.
but I don't think either side's willing to do it. You know baseball,
right.
man. Baseball's weird about these in-division trades. They don't like to do it.
The Seattle Mariners are another team that should be in the
Well, that's how you get Logan Gilbert.
Hey, they're looking for pitching, or the Padres.
That's
how you get a Logan Gilbert.
Or Robbie Ray, for example.
No,
He's Alex Ferrario.
no.
That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm
pitching.
Brandon Kiley. Coming up in 15 minutes, it's T-Bone's favorite segment of the week. I'm glad I'm here for it this week. Believe it or not. But coming up next, has the transfer portal been a net positive for college football? Let's zig while everybody else zags here on 101 ESPN. It's Alex, he's T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We'll get to Believe It or Not coming up here in about 10 minutes or so. But, Alex, the transfer portal gets crapped on all day, every day. People hate it, man. It's basically free agency for college football. Guys go in, they leave, and then they end up never being able to be seen again by their fan base. You get all these 4 stars, 5 stars that sign with you out of high school, and you can't even count on them to stay beyond the first year that they are on campus. I get it. It can be frustrating. But, man, look at Oregon. The reason why they're involved in the college football playoff right now, or the potential for it, hell, both teams that are in the Pac-12 championship game. Michael Penix Jr. was really good at Indiana. Had an injury, goes to Washington, regains his form, and is legitimately in the Heisman conversation this year. Bo Nix was terrible at Auburn. I thought he was a complete bust of a big-time prospect there. He goes to Oregon and has been fantastic for them, and now he's a potential Heisman finalist. Guess who else was a transfer? Jaden Daniels. He's at Arizona State under Herm Edwards, has a really nice first year, regresses in a significant way. The Arizona State program is just awful. And they celebrated, their locker room celebrated when he decided to transfer to LSU. He certainly has had the last laugh. I saw an article yesterday on The Athletic, Alex, of a mock draft. They had Jaden Daniels going in the top 10.
One if Arizona State will
of
celebrate
the upcoming
that.
NFL draft. So LSU was able to get him and acquire him via the transfer portal, and he didn't waste away at Arizona State in what has become a dumpster fire of a football program. Mizzou this year was able to win 10 games in large part because of the transfer portal. It actually helped them a hell of a lot more than it hurt them. They were able to get Theo Weiss, a big-time wide receiver player for them this year. They were able to get guys that shored up the defensive side of the football for them. Their safety, Joseph Charleston, via the transfer portal. Their defensive ends, via the transfer portal. Their defensive tackles, via the transfer portal. So this is actually not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's become a net positive, Alex. I would say when you look across college football, guys that are transferring down because they went to too big of a school, you see that a lot. Guys that are able to get better opportunities and really improve their draft stock because they were at a middling school and now they can go to an Alabama, a Georgia, an Ohio State, a Mizzou. I think it's ultimately been a net positive for college football, despite a lot of the backlash that it gets from casual fans.
I personally feel like it provides the storylines going into each season. And I mean, like, free agency does this and essentially is free agency for college football. But when you get a guy like Jaden Daniels with Arizona State that they're celebrating this player leaving and you're wondering, like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden he goes on, it creates that connection to a college football team for just the generic college football fan. Because I didn't know much about Jaden Daniels other than what we saw about Arizona State. And then I watched him with LSU against Mizzou, and it's like, damn, this guy's awesome. And then you kind of follow along with that player the rest of the way. To me, and I know people complain mostly because, you know, if their team doesn't have the money to acquire these guys or bring these players in, or if they don't have the status that other teams do, then, well, I'm always left looking for something better. But when you've got the battle that is the transfer portal and the name recognition and guys who are looking to rejuvenate their college career, to me, it makes college athletics a lot more entertaining.
So a couple of guys that I would point to, like DJ Uiagalelei, it didn't work for him at Clemson. It was a disaster. He goes to Oregon State this year, and they're a really good team with him as the starting quarterback. He just entered the transfer portal again. T-Bone, you mentioned this during the break. I think it's a really good point. His coach is going to Michigan State. It's entirely possible that he just follows him to Michigan State. That would be a good fit for him. Another one is the Duke quarterback, Riley Leonard. His coach left for Texas A&M. He's reportedly interested in going to one of Auburn or Notre Dame. In previous iterations of college football, like if this was 20 years ago, his coach left, Riley Leonard's a legitimate NFL prospect. He probably just declares for the draft this year and says, you know what, I'll just go ahead and forego my remainder of my eligibility in college football. I'll go into the draft. He'll probably be like a third-round pick this year and maybe never start in the league. Well, instead, he gets to stay in college football. He's probably going to earn himself like $3 million next year to be a college football starting quarterback. He's going to go play at like Auburn, Notre Dame, maybe Texas A&M following his coach there. That's good for the sport, man. And it's good for Riley Leonard. He had an injury-plagued season at Duke. Now he's going to go play with better talent at a better program with more exposure and potentially bounce back next year while getting paid and hopefully continue to hone in on his skills before going to a league that he might not be prepared for right now. So I think it's good for the kids as well that they're going to be able to get these opportunities. And for a lot of these quarterbacks, like some of these guys that are staying in school right now, if it was 10, 15 years ago, I think they leave. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, Alex, with Dane Brugler, the head draft guy over at The Athletic. And he said he was talking to a parent of a kid that he currently has projected to go in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. And she said, hey, my son is considering going to the league. Would you recommend us doing so? And he said, listen, I'm not an NFL scout, so it's hard for me to give you advice on this. I think you should do whatever you think is best for your family. However, if you have NIL opportunities that are going to amount to, $300,000 at your current school, I would stay and try to improve your draft stock. And she said, okay, well, we got a $500,000 offer. He said, then I would personally recommend you guys stay. That couldn't have happened 10 years ago. So I think for all those reasons and so many more, it's actually been a positive. And the NIL being a part of this, I also think helps a lot.
Let me ask this one question. And I'm with you. I just said it just like you did. Like, it's a positive. Do you think that the transfer portal is also putting the mindset of the players that get drafted into the NFL, this mindset of, well, I don't like the team I'm at, so I'm going to demand to be traded? Because, like, in the transfer portal, like, you commit to a team, you say, I'm going to play here, and if it doesn't work out, if you're not the guy, if you don't like the place, then you could basically say, I'm done here and I'm moving on. Is that just grooming those people and those players into being that in the NFL?
Maybe. I mean, but that happens in the NFL.
You have no, unlike in the college game where you have the leverage as the player because there's no contract, you have no leverage in the NFL. Like, if I'm an NFL, like, let's use Caleb Williams as the example here. He's been talked about saying, like, oh, maybe I don't want to go into the draft because I'm going to be drafted by a bad team. Totally fair. But if you do go in and then you do get drafted by, let's say, the Bears, who have that number 1 pick, and they sign you to a contract, if I'm the Bears and he says, oh, this is terrible, I want out, Bears are going to say, no, you're not going anywhere.
7 years. 7 years before you have legitimate leverage in the NFL. Unless you want to sit out and not earn any money, which is your right. But, I mean, that's not particularly bright to do that. We saw with Deshaun Watson how that works out when a guy takes off a year or two from the NFL. You come back, you're not the same player a lot of the time. So, yeah, you can sit out, but the team has 4 years of your rookie contract. And then if you're a first-round pick, they've got the 5th-year option. And then they can franchise tag you for 2 consecutive years. So it's much like Major League Baseball in that, cool, you want to be traded? Awesome, sit out.
Yeah.
That would be my stance if I'm an NFL team. So does it potentially put them into a bad place, Alex, where mentally they're like, hey, when the going gets tough, leave? Maybe. I think that happens less than a lot of people suggest, though. I think what we've seen specifically at Mizzou is a lot of the kids last year wanted to leave or were considering leaving because it was a bad year. I think there was frustration within the locker room about some of the NIL stuff that was taking place. Mizzou made good, got a lot of those guys paid in a way that they weren't previously. And then the program started to shift. The winning took place. The locker room became a more friendly and happy environment. And now, because of all of that, they're going into the portal this year from an advantageous situation of being able to sell, hey, it's not just hope and optimism here. It's real tangible results that we can sell you. It's NFL prospects that we can sell you. It's Theo Weiss, who was an afterthought at Oklahoma, who came to Mizzou for 1 year and might get drafted this year because of the way that we utilized him in our offense. So I think all of those things end up making it something that you look back on and you say to yourself, hey, man, this might not be as bad as we made it out to be. Alex, there was a piece today on ESPN.com breaking down the best transfers in the portal era. Number 1 on that list for them was Joe Burrow. What he was able to do after leaving Ohio State, being a backup there for his entire career, and then going down to LSU, and we know the story, right? Has one of the best seasons I've ever seen by a quarterback in college football. The rest of the top 5, number 2, Caleb Williams, number 3, Bo Nix, number 4, Jaden Daniels, and number 5, Michael Penix Jr. If you guys had to go with your favorite transfer, whether it's storyline, what they were able to do when they got there, what's been your favorite transfer so far in the era of the portal?
I mean, I know it's chalk, but mine would be Joe Burrow. I mean, you went from a dude that was a nobody where he was, and people sitting there and being like, yeah, this guy's never going. Honestly, it's the Jaden Daniel conversation. I know Daniel didn't put up the numbers that Burrow did, but I mean, you went from being a guy who wouldn't get drafted to a guy that everybody wanted that year in the draft. So he would be the one for me.
Burrow's a good one. I think the one for me is it might end up being probably DJ Uiagalelei, because I can remember saying, like, dude, this guy's terrible. Like, I saw him at Clemson, a group of weapons. I remember when he got transferred to Oregon State, I was like, oh, Oregon State just wasted the spot on the quarterback. They didn't get the guy. And he goes there and he shows that he can play. I would throw Penix into that conversation too, Bo Nix into that conversation. Nick's probably more than Penix in terms of ranking them because Nix was the same way for me. I was like, oh man, dude, this guy's terrible at Auburn. He's not going to be able to be the next thing. Penix was just a good story because he was great at Indiana, put that Indiana program on the map, and then he got hurt. They fell apart. He left, and Washington's been awesome ever since. Personal Illinois one, Tommy DeVito. Yeah. DeVito transferring from Syracuse into Illinois.
Cody Schrader.
It's a really good one. He was a walk-on, though.
Same thing. Still transferred away from Truman and then walked on to Mizzou.
Let me tell you a story.
Oh, I got to go.
About a college football quarterback who took his team to the national championship and was benched at halftime of the national championship, and his backup went on to win that game for his team.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
And then he transfers to Oklahoma and wins the Heisman.
Chad Daniel.
What? Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is my favorite moment, my favorite story, my favorite player from the portal era because of everything that went into it. He was the consummate team. I will never forget his post-game interview after the national championship where, dude, I would be furious if I was Jalen Hurts. I was just benched in the national championship for this Tua Tagovailoa when I was the one that brought this team here. I'd be absolutely furious. Instead, he was the consummate pro, and it was the moment where we all probably should have known, man, this guy's going to do something special. I don't know where, I don't know when, but he's going to make himself into the player that he needs to be, and he did. He went to Oklahoma, became that player, and now is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So Jalen Hurts, for me,
that's a good one.
Is my favorite player from the portal era because of what his entire storyline was from start to finish.
I completely forgot he transferred from Bama to Oklahoma.
Another good one that we got on the text line is Hendon Hooker, who was at Virginia Tech for a while, ended up being like a 28-year-old rookie quarterback in the NFL this year. But he was at Virginia Tech, was okay for them, had some injury situations there as well, and then goes to Tennessee and puts together one of the best offenses that we've seen in recent years with his final year there at Tennessee. So that was another really good one as well. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. T-Bone's favorite segment of the week, believe it or not, is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends out at Ted Drew's. How does Will Ferrell say it in Elf? Santa! Well, he's coming out to Ted Drew's just off of Chippewa this Sunday and then the following Sunday, December 3rd and December 10th. So you and your family can go out and see Santa from 12 to 2 o'clock on Sunday for the next 2 weeks. It's free. And, of course, you get that Ted Drew's famous frozen custard while you're out there. And when you're out there, you can get the Christmas tree as well. If you're like me, you're probably still needing to get out there to do that and decorate it. So while you're there, shop amongst all of the trees that they've got, the balsam firs, the Fraser firs, the Scotch pines. You can, of course, enjoy Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. They'll help you pick one out. They'll help you put it on your car and make sure it's secure for the ride home. And then walk across the parking lot and get all your Christmas shopping done. You can buy Ted Drew's t-shirts, Ted Drew's hats, Ted Drew's gift cards, the perfect gift for that person you don't know who to shop for. So go on out there off of Chippewa, see Santa, and get Christmas done right with Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues back in action tonight as they host the Buffalo Sabres. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. This Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heat and air conditioning dealer. Oh, yeah, boys. I missed this last week. Family told me to shut up at the table when I sang it. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
Free, flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. If you've got a scenario, we'll tell you if we are believing it or not here on 101 ESPN. Let's start out with this, boys. Believe it or not, we will get at least one significant upset in the championship games this weekend on the college football side.
Not believe this one. Because, significant upset. Would you consider Alabama over Georgia a significant upset?
Yeah, it's a 6-point line.
I don't feel like that's fair. It wouldn't surprise me.
One of Washington, Oklahoma State, or Iowa end up winning. One of those three end up winning.
I'm still not going to believe this one because I don't think any of those teams end up winning. I think all of them are pretty obvious which one's pulling away the victory.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to believe it. I can't see any. I mean, Washington I can kind of see, but I just think Oregon's the better team right now, and Iowa, that shouldn't be called a football program.
That's funny.
No, so I'm not going to believe this. I can't see it happening.
I'm not either. I think we're dismissing it too much, though.
Are we?
I think so.
Iowa or one of them?
I don't think we are. I mean, Washington could do it.
Yeah.
Nah.
They could.
I think Oregon's clear-cut better.
I think it really just comes down to, is Michael Penix right? Is he healthy? And my personal opinion is no. That's why I took Oregon in our Pick'em challenge. But Michael Penix Jr. is one of the best players in the country. Now, let's not get this mistaken. He's got two of the best receivers in the country that are both expected to be first-round picks. He's fantastic. They won the last time these two teams met. So I know that the line is massive, and I think that Oregon is worthy of that line being that big. But Washington could do it. They would be the one that I would probably say is most likely to come up with a significant upset going into this weekend.
Sure.
Alex, what do you got for us in Believe It or Not?
Believe it or not, guys, if Travis Sanheim is on this Blues team, the Blues are a top 3 team in the Central Division.
Can he play on the power play?
Yeah, he can. And he's actually pretty good on it. Travis Sanheim. Did you say who's this?
Yeah, I asked who was the player that you were talking about.
Were you not listening?
No, I missed it. I was reading this from the 314. T-Bone, honest to God, has gotten much better at singing that song. I was like, yeah, good for him.
Hey, congrats, man. I'm proud of all of you.
Thanks.
So say that as
Travis, I'm so pissed off. I hate you
don't listen to me 90% of the time. Stop it.
I hate you so much. Travis Sanheim is on this Blues team. They're a top 3 team in the Central Division.
Sure. They're pretty close to that right now, so believe it.
Mike... Done.
No, I'm being yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I was reading a text that said from the 314. I never realized Tanner has the voice of an angel. Thank you, 314.
I hate both of you.
No, I'm not dismissing what you're saying. He's really good, and the Blues are close to being third in the division right now. They're only 3 points back of the Winnipeg Jets. I think he could be worthy of 3 points for you. So sure, yeah, I believe it. I think that this is a good scenario, and I think you're correct. Yes, believe it.
Yeah, I believe it. Because I think Preko's played better by far this year. He looks like a number 1 defenseman. But with that being said, I can still see that he has a weaker link next to him in Nick Leddy. Nick, if you had Sanheim, you have Leddy on the third pairing, which I think he would be perfectly adequate for.
Mike Kelly of NHL Network, who does a bunch of stats, he's been on the show before. He just did a piece earlier today on Travis Sanheim saying he's one of the best defensemen in terms of time on ice compared to expected goals allowed in the National Hockey League.
He's putting together an unbelievable season. He has 16 points in 22 games. I know you mentioned that earlier. I'm just repeating it. Last year he had 23 in 81 games. That's insane, dude. He's producing offensively, and he's really good defensively for them again. They tried so hard to move off of that contract. They were willing to take Torrey Krug back just to not have him as a part of the team. What a bounce-back candidate for them. Yeah, would have been nice. Would have been nice to have him. T-Bone?
Believe it or not, the St. Louis Cardinals, by the end of the offseason, will have top 3 odds to win the NL pennant.
Ooh.
I don't know if odds are out.
You know the Braves and Phillies are going to be there no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm not going to believe it because
the Dodgers will be up there.
Yeah, and I think the Cubs are going to.
Vegas loves them.
And I think the Cubs are going to have a big offseason that puts them up there. So I'm going to say not believe it.
The National League odds right now. Oh my God, people like the Cubs, huh? The Braves are at 3-1, Dodgers at 4-1. How could you possibly bet on the Dodgers at 4-1 right now when they don't have a rotation? This is nonsense. The Phillies at 4.5-1, the Mets at 12-1. What are we doing here? The Padres at 12-1. What are we doing here? Cubs at 15 and Cardinals at 15-1. I feel like the only team worth betting on there is the Phillies at 4.5-1.
Yeah, I think Phillies Braves will easily be top 2. That third one though, like I could see where if you add in a Glass now. You add in a bullpen arm, maybe 2. Like, you're in.
Trade for Juan Soto.
Well,
get Yamamoto.
Remember, you're giving up Walker in that deal.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
No.
You're not.
I can see where they could get into top 3, but I think I'm not. The reason I would not believe it is because I do think the Vegas odds makers will look at it, whether it be the Dodgers, the Padres. You know, if the Mets add a Yamamoto to the rotation, they're probably going to like somebody that we really don't. I mean, last year they loved the Dodgers to win like 98 games. We all took the under. They won 100. So.
And then what happened?
Well, I didn't say they won it all, but I think there'll be some team that probably sneaks past the Cardinals. But I would be willing to say, like, hey, keep an eye on their odds because they add another top-tier starter, add a bullpen piece or 2. I might be willing to take the.
Also, if you think they're going to do that, you should do it now.
Yeah,
before they do that.
Well,
because
I'm not that confident,
the odds are going to change in a significant way if they add, Yamamoto or Glasnow or Cease or whoever that big-time pitcher is that they could potentially acquire, because that'll jump them. I would think if they add one of those arms, they'll be 4th in the National League in terms of their odds to win the division or win the league, because they'll jump the Mets, Padres, and Cubs, I would think, unless those teams all do something big time. The Dodgers, by the way, are going to do something significant this offseason. Or believe it or not, the Dodgers will be the team that end up adding at least one of Yamamoto or Shohei Ohtani.
I would say not believe that because I think they're going to make some type of big trade to acquire their starting pitcher. I think the Cease, I think Tyler Glasnow. I could see Seattle trading one of those guys to the LA Dodgers. I think their big move is going to be via trade. Juan Soto.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it either. I think the Mets are going to be the team after Yamamoto or the Yankees out east somewhere. And then Ohtani, I just don't have a good feel for.
I think he goes to the Cubs, man.
I don't have a great feel of where he might go. But I remember, I think it was either Buster Olney or Jeff Passan said, like when you think of the Dodgers, they're not the kind of team that's going to give Ohtani control of what he wants to do.
When was the last time also, to that point, that they went out and just made a huge free agency splash? Years, dollars, everything. I mean, it's basically just Freddie Freeman, right? Have they done it with anybody else?
He wasn't like a significant splash because he was like a 6-year older player.
Yeah.
He was more of like the Sonny Gray type.
They operate very similarly to the Cardinals in this regard. Like they traded for Mookie Betts and then gave him a massive contract, but that's more in line with what the Cardinals acquired with Nolan Arenado in terms of the AAV, and their deal with Freddie Freeman is basically what the Cardinals have with Paul Goldschmidt. They don't really operate the way where they're just going to go out there and spin frivolously. They're not the Phillies in that regard.
Yeah, I was about to say like it's probably the Crawford deal, but he was acquired via trade.
And that was prior to what they're currently doing. Yeah. That was before their player development thing had really become the machine that it is today.
Yeah, I can't think of like who's been the biggest name. Now they've re-signed a couple of guys to big deals, like Taylor got a decent deal, Kershaw's gotten a big contract. Outside of that, though, who? I mean, they even let Kenley Jansen walk, and that guy's one of the best closers of our generation.
They're not a team that spends the way that we all kind of think of them spending in free agency. They'll go out there and make trades. They'll go out there and get guys. If they have a player that's a star, they'll keep them. They'll retain them. But it is kind of similar to the Cardinals in that way, just to a slightly greater degree. Obviously, they're going to have a bigger payroll than them. So it'll be an interesting team to monitor this offseason because the Dodgers fans are also getting frustrated with that way of operating. So be curious to see what they decide to do there. He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Let's get to the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my dentist, 100 West Dental, just off of Manchester, the holiday season. You're going to want to make sure those teeth are looking white and clean. So, of course, you got to get into Dr. Pryor and his team to make sure that your mouth is looking clean and healthy. But if you go into 100 West Dental and mention 101 ESPN, they're going to be giving away free teeth whitening kits. All you got to do is mention 101 ESPN. And if you also want to talk about other opportunities, mention my name, Alex Ferrario, and you get $1,000 off of an Invisalign package, all there for you at 100 West Dental. I personally love them because I was going to a dentist that didn't do the proper work necessary, missed a tumor in my mouth, and I lost 7 teeth because the dentist wasn't on top of everything. That's not the case with 100 West Dental. They're all about the preventative procedure. They've got the most modern technology, and the patient experience is the best. So go check them out. You could schedule online, 100westdental.com. 100 West Dental. Make sure you get with the best at 100 West.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Hey, tonight you can hang out with Moon from The Riz Show and Carrie Davis from 6 to 8 o'clock at Cyberg's downtown. The guys will be hanging out over there. Enjoy yourself. Watch Thursday Night Football, 6 to 8 o'clock. Carrie Davis, Moon, Bud Light at Cyberg's on Market Street in downtown St. Louis. Alex, before we get out of here today, you and T-Bone will take care of the good people tomorrow and on Monday. By the time that I get back on Tuesday, we'll be right around the start of the winter meetings. Will the Cardinals have made another move at that point?
No. I think it's going to take till the end of the winter meetings for the Cardinals to make a move. And I would say that we're going to hear a lot more about the trade market for another starting pitcher, whether it's Glasnow or Dylan Cease by the end of winter meetings, but no move.
I'll be optimistic. I'll say they trade for a bullpen arm in that time frame. I think they could get a deal done early on in the winter meetings.
I think Tyler O'Neill will be gone by this time next week. I think he will be moved to somebody. I think it will be for a bullpen arm. So I will say optimistically that, yes, by the time that I arrive on Tuesday morning, we will have news that Tyler O'Neill has been traded somewhere. That would be my guess over the course of this weekend. I would also love if they get one of their big-time starters in by the end of the weekend as well.
We'd love it, too.
For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. I'll talk to you guys on Tuesday at 11 a.m. The guys will have you covered tomorrow and Monday here on 101 ESPN.